point. I'll pass that on.
Chair, you have a live mic.
Okay. I know we've been jumping around on the agenda, so,
Yep, we're moving back to our land use.
okay.
We're gonna start up now with formerly item 17E, that is now 9B.
Okay.
Just a reminder, we do have time certain items no sooner than 2:30, and then directly following that, hopefully no sooner than 3 o'clock. But we'll try to get through these land use items and then move along.
Okay.
What we're working with here, 9B, is a resolution of the Board of County Commissioners proposing an amendment to the Collier County Growth Management Plan, specifically amending the future land use element and future land use map and map series to add the US 41 East overlay. And I will turn to Mike Bosey to begin the presentation.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mike Bosey, Planning Zoning Director. We're here today to talk about a project that is a long-tenured project within the county. This is an initiative that started off in 2008, 2009 with the East Naples Civic Association. There was an East Trail study that was done, and there was some action that was contemplated. Then the Board of County Commissioners directed a US 41 corridor study that was a visual preference survey analysis, talking to the community, finding out what type of land uses, designs, overall feel of the community that the East Naples community was trying to support. And then we had another update of that study was the East Naples Community Development Plan. It was accepted, I believe, in October of 2020 by the Board of County Commissioners, and that development plan had a specific due-out, and that specific due-out was the development of the US 41 East zoning overlay. We're not here to discuss the zoning overlay. What we're here to discuss is the foundation for that zoning overlay as the GMP overlay subdistrict for the East Naples community plan. The zoning overlay stretches from basically the edge of the government center down to Port of the Islands. It implements, like I said, the East Naples Community Development Plan, establishes design and development standards, promotes mobility options, allows increased density and height in certain areas. And what we're proposing today at the GMP level is to increase the amount of land uses that are allowed related to qualified targeted industries as economic development instruments and tools to promote a wider variety of land use and with economic development ties in, as well as increasing density within the community and the regional nodes, commercial nodes within this corridor, and that increased height and increased density is associated with trying to promote mixed-use development. What we've heard from the community is they want land uses that provide more give to the individual neighborhoods that are in close proximity. And they feel like mixed use really provides for the greatest level of integration of that residential land uses and commercial land uses that are directed to those households. So mixed use development will promote the type of commercial land uses and development and promote commercial development that really attends to the needs of the dwelling units that surround not only within this corridor, but sits to the north and the south of the corridor in terms of the residential neighborhoods that border it. And also, like I said, allows economic development uses within the urban area. This is where I was talking about your corridor segments, your regional centers. Those are the centers that are being proposed to be the increased density from 16 units an acre to 20 units an acre when they are providing for the design and the type of mixes that the community is trying to promote. And then your green community centers are being suggested to be up to 16 units per acre when an applicant is going to provide for that mix of uses that the community is looking for, that gives more to the individual dwelling units that surround the corridor. As I said, within your regional subdistrict, it's 20 units an acre. Within your community center, it's up to 16 units an acre. And none of this is by right. This is just providing the eligibility. For these to come back to seek these type of densities and to seek these mixes of uses, it will have to come back through a rezoning process. So the whole compatibility, the analysis, the neighborhood information meetings, the input from the surrounding property owners, those will all be provided for in the individual applications that would come forward to take advantages of what the growth management plan is making these in terms of eligible for. Another thing is increasing the heights within your regional community subdistricts to allow for up to 20 additional feet when they're providing for the type of uses that the neighborhood is in the East Naples community is trying to promote. The other aspect, what we're doing at the growth management plan, is an expansion of the traffic congestion exception area. The traffic congestion exception area means when you are proposing a development within one of these TCEA, you do not go out and look link by link to see your volume to capacity availability for your transportation analysis, because we know that those systems are constrained. It allows for, it's a little more permissive in terms of allowing development to move forward, even in the height of areas that may be deemed more congested in terms of the overall volume of traffic. And we are currently, the TCA area runs to Rattlesnake Hammock, Thompson Drive, intersection US 41. We are suggesting or proposing to extend that down to the activity center at 951 in US 41. As I explained, the TCE, the Transportation Concurrency Exception Area, allows for exemption from that link-by-link analysis that's normally required for all other development order review. And here's where we're at within the regulatory process. March 16th of this year, the Planning Commission heard the GMP amendments for the overlay. They unanimously supported the recommendation in a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. We're here today for the transmittal hearing. If the board decides to transmit this, we will send it to the state DEO. They'll have 30 days for their expedited review. While that's going on, we have a May 3rd meeting with the full DSAC. We've already been to the subcommittees. What we're talking about there is the zoning overlay. That's going to implement, that's the regulations that's going to implement the GMP that we are transmitted today. We're going to go talk to the full DSAC about the design standards that are being proposed related to the US 41 zoning overlay. And then from the DSAC, we are going to the Planning Commission at July 6th of this year to get the Planning Commission's full review of the zoning overlay. They'll make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. The tentative schedule right now is August 22nd. We would be bringing the first reading of that zoning overlay back to the Board of County Commissioners for you to hear the details and the specifics of the development standards that are being created as part of the overall project. And then you will finally have a second hearing for the a second hearing of the EZO, the zoning overlay, and that will be married up with the adoption hearing of the GMP amendments. So the GMP amendments and the final hearing for the zoning overlay are tentatively scheduled for September 12th. And that's the overall timeline that we tentatively have scheduled for the program. And staff is available for any questions. I also have Ms. Mosca, who's been deeply involved with the community and at all the public meetings to answer any questions that maybe I can't field.
So, Mr. Bosey, remind us again how long this has been chatted about, talked about, kicked around. How far does this
2009.
Okay, so here, one of the things that and I appreciate it. We talked yesterday, and what you just did. The old saying, "You just built us a watch." But let me just tell everybody the time. Okay, the bottom line is the real travesty and disappointment here is, God, I would have loved to have been sitting here in 2010 approving all of this, because then we would have a plan that would have protected my entire district the way that the Golden Gate Master Plan does so many amazing things to make sure that the right things are built in District 3. So it's a real value, to Commissioner Saunders, because it gives him a framework and it gives us a framework. And it would have been nice to have this framework in 2009. That being said, and even as you and I talked, if this thing was passed tomorrow, we can't undo the sins of the past. Whether it's storage units or things that wouldn't have been allowed to be built if these higher standards would have been enacted. Having said that, what I just want to make sure my colleagues understand, and I'm sure they do, today and correct me if I'm wrong, all we're being asked to do today is allow this analysis to continue to go forward. And then, like you showed on the timeline, we're not approving construction. We're not approving that we agree with everything in there. It's basically going to the next step, so that then eventually you can bring us back something that's going to be sort of like the East Naples master plan, similar to how we use the Golden Gate master plan as a really solid framework to guide our decisions, which is something that District 1 has needed for a really, really long time. There's going to be a lot of things, I think, that are eventually going to come back to us that are going to be nice to knows, but not things that we can implement. I mean, I've sat in on some of the preliminary meetings, and, we're not going to tear down all of US 41 and make it look like Fifth Avenue, although we might have been able to do a lot of that in 2009, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I mean, and I say that for emphasis, because, man, did we waste a lot of time in District 1. But having said that, I think this is really great work, and it will give us a framework to go forward, albeit, sort of late in the game. There's only so much green space left to build on. But, having said that, can you more eloquently state than I just did, what are you asking us to vote on today? Isn't it just to move forward with the next steps of analysis that are helping to formulate this East Naples US 41 overlay master plan?
Yeah, Chair, I appreciate that. And today is an action that's requesting you to transmit the GMP amendments that's going to set the foundation, the permissions that's going to allow for your staff to bring back the specifics of the zoning overlay. The zoning overlay, the devil's in the detail always.
And if what you bring us back we totally hate, then
there's no obligation that you have to agree with every and all aspects of the zoning overlay as it's brought back. What this does is simply allows for the extension of the TCEA down to the US 41 in Collier Boulevard intersection from the Rattlesnake Hammock termination right now, and increases the density for your community and your regional centers to 16 and 20 units.
But as you said,
as eligibility.
Yeah. As you said, not automatically. It gives
it
it the
just creates the
potential.
eligibility for it. So when the next step that you will have when it comes back to the Board of County Commissioners will be the zoning overlay that has the do's, the don'ts, the design standards, the specifics. And you can adopt all of it, you can adopt none of it, you could take pieces of it a la carte as you feel appropriate in terms of what you feel is right for the community based upon the community.
The big things I like in the early versions, and I think my constituents in District 1 like, are and you had it on your slide there, it establishes stronger, better design and development standards as guidelines. It doesn't mean we do it. I mean, if we think that it's overreach and we're asking somebody to, that's trying to build something that's basic, and it doesn't mandate that everything looks like the Taj Mahal, but it gives us much more options to consider to try to give District 1 and this East Naples Trail more cohesion, even though it might be, I'll never say too little, too late, but would have liked to seen this a lot earlier. And then as I wrote down here, it also establishes the community centers with a much stronger, better design, which is basically concentrating sort of the industrial things in very particular areas, so they're not just sort of spread out in sort of a ragtag way, the way you find in a lot of portions of East Naples right now. So it won't correct that, but it'll make sure we don't continue to do that, or that we have the option, or that it puts on the radar better planning, better design. The same way that the Golden Gate Master Plan does a lot of those things in so many ways. It's just that they've enjoyed that for many, many years. It's now time for District 1 to play catch up. But I got a couple people lit up here. Commissioner Kowal.
Thank you. If I'm correct, this portion of this too is also my district, right, from Pine Street up to Rattlesnake.
Correct.
As you're traveling east. Just kind of two things I wanted to ask. Are they going to take in consideration the new affordable housing item that we just passed, reference to the conversion of the C1, C2, C3 in our transit routes, which I believe some of this is along the transit route?
The transit density along transit lines, it was specifically requested to be excluded from this corridor by the public that we've interacted with from the East Naples community. So that the GMP amendments for the transit corridor do not apply to this segment. It does not apply. It's specifically written within to that proposed GMP amendment that we've transmitted that does not include this segment because this segment has been set aside specifically to craft the design standards and the characteristics of this corridor in the way that the participants of this program, of this study, has directed and has requested.
Okay, I'm just trying to recall the map we had of the overall when we passed that a few weeks back, and then I thought part of 41 had the red going along it.
Well, there's always activity centers. You've got your activity centers. The density along your transit lines was for your non-activity center areas. That's for any project that's along that 41, any transit line corridor has the ability to take advantage of the TOD, the transit-oriented development. The increasing of the activity centers, that's where you will find some overlap in terms of the 25 units an acre related to your activity centers.
Thank you for the clarity.
Sure.
Yeah, and my apologies to Commissioner Kowal. Our districts do overlap, and after the redistricting, I think the majority of this was District 1, but it's not now. So you and I will be obviously, tag teaming on this and asking the same type of questions. Commissioner McDaniel.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair. My first of all, I'm in favor of this. I mean, this having this plan allows us to not be zoning by moratorium. That was the poor habit that previous boards had gotten into in the past, and having a plan allows for all of us to go forth.
God knows you hate that, right?
So. All that notwithstanding, one quick question. Does the proposed amendments take away any of the available uses that are existent today?
No.
And does the expansion of the TCEA segment allow for a development that would come that wouldn't necessarily be supported by the existing infrastructure?
No, what the TCEA does is it changes the way the transportation analysis looks at your development, your development order, but it doesn't alter what uses or the type of development that can move forward. It just changes the analysis at your site development plan or at your plat in terms of where the analysis is focused upon. If it wasn't in a TCA, every link that would be affected has to be satisfied in terms of traffic capacity. When you have a TCA, that analysis is not provided for. It in transportation maybe wants to provide a more articulate description of it, but it really does. It exempts a proposal or exempts an area from having to satisfy certain components of transportation analysis.
Transportation standing behind you. You want to let the more articulate statement come in?
Bring in the brains.
Yeah, here she comes.
For the record, Trinity Scott, Department Head Transportation Management Services. The state of Florida has essentially usurped our authority with regard to transportation concurrency anyhow. We have to allow an applicant to do a proportionate share calculation. So transportation concurrency, if they came in along this corridor and we did not have adequate capacity, they can still move forward in a pay-and-go situation. They would still be required to do that same analysis here, even though they're exempt from link-by-link concurrency. But with the establishment of a transportation concurrency exception area, we do have the ability to also require some additional items such as bicycle pedestrian connectivity, mixed use, all things that help us reduce the impact to the roadway.
So over, because my concern was that we were, because of the proposition of the increase in height and the densities, and then grabbing additional concurrency area to theoretically alleviate the lack of infrastructure to support a project. And I know that this board has, made adjustments in how we're doing what we're doing. I just didn't want us to be leaning out too far and assimilating areas that would provide for an approval that wouldn't necessarily be supported by the necessary infrastructure that we have.
So with the with the increased density and the multi-use nature of this, number one, we would be putting density in areas where we would have shorter trip lengths. So instead of that density moving further out east, we would have shorter trip lengths. So instead of someone driving 10 miles to get to a Publix, there may be one within 2 or 3 miles. So those are all things that we're looking at when we're addressing the transportation as well.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. I know we have public comment. I kind of wanted to set the table just with conversation between us. And so I think this is a good time now to transition. How many do we have, Mr. Miller?
I have 2 registered speakers on
Go
this
ahead,
item, sir. Your first speaker is Jacob Wingy, and he'll be followed by Gordon Brumwell.
Wingy?
Close. You get a gold star when you get it right.
Winge?
Wingy.
Wingy.
Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, Jacob Wingy, President, East Naples Civic and Commerce. Just want to show our support for this initiative. I think something that, again, has been going on for, almost 2 decades, and I think really in a larger picture, much, much longer than that, as far as getting a plan established for the benefit of East Naples. And I think along with transportation, housing, and other elements, stormwater, environmental protections, as you see coming in with the full plan, that's really going to be beneficial to the county as an overall. But I just want to ask for your support in moving this process forward, laying the foundation, and I think you're going to be very happy with the full plan that comes back after we bring it to the Planning Commission and DSAC. So thank you. Thanks so much.
And your next speaker and final speaker on this item is Gordon Brumwell.
Hi, Dr. Gordon Brumwell from Crown Point. The US 41 East Corridor Overlay, we can call it the East Naples Master Plan, holds the promise of non-auto mobility and maintaining some of the natural feel and function of East Naples. With all the loss of forest cover, increased building, and more cars on the road, the people who actually live here want that promise of the overlay to be fulfilled. As we've heard, the overlay can't exist without this amendment, so please transmit it. Now let's get out of the details, out of the weeds, and talk about vision. With a little planning, the non-auto paths of the overlay could be integrated into the Paradise Coast Trail we were hearing about earlier today, the surface streets to its highway, if you will. Now, combine the overlay's promise of maintaining our natural vibe with safe, inviting network of trails and our amazing non-beach natural assets, and we could have the economic engine that other Florida beautiful trail towns are. I know you wouldn't put all your financial eggs in one basket. You guys are too smart for that. My vision diversifies us beyond the beach basket we are too dependent on. So please pass this amendment so the overlay can be worked on. Schedule the workshop the Naples Pathway Coalition has asked for so the Paradise Coast Trail can be finished sooner rather than later. And please keep this trail town vision for the East Naples area in the back of your head. Thank you.
That was your final speaker, Mr. Chair.
Make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I got a motion to approve in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. I didn't cut off somebody's comment, did I? Please, if you had something you wanted to
I'll
say.
say something to Mr. Bosey.
Yes, sir.
Yesterday, I was talking about you, and I had just read something about Nancy Pelosi, and I said, and I called you Mr. Belosi, and I can't get that out of my head. So I want to apologize in advance for any time I call you Mr. Belosi.
And I will gladly accept that because it gives me an opportunity
visual out of
I
it.
wanted to recognize Michelle Mosca. She's been working effortlessly with the East Naples Civic Association, has really gone out of her way to go the extra mile to make sure that this project arrived to this point as clean as possible. Just want to, couldn't have a better staff than what Michelle provides to the community. Thank you.
You know, I just wanted to add, in the end, when we get the report, there's going to be the reality is there's going to be a lot of nice to haves in there, or wish we could have had, but I expect that there's going to be a lot of things that I want to make sure we aggressively do address, the things that are doable. And my expectation is that there should be a lot of that as well. Yeah, there'll be some things that might be sort of conceptual or maybe a bridge too far, a little too late, but there's going to be a lot of other things. So I look forward to working closely with you, as I know Commissioner Kowal does, and figuring where we can make immediate change and not sort of, kick the can or have our replacement sitting here in 10 years talking about this report that nobody acted on. We're going to act. We're going to act. So thank you very much. I also will add only because I heard a little bit of disjointed pieces, and it has nothing to do with the vote here. I want to make sure that when we talk about this East Naples overlay, that we go all the way down to Port of the Islands. And I think, I made that change early on that, East Naples just doesn't end at the intersection of Collier and US 41. And I think we've made that improvement. But let's make sure if we find an old file or an old reference somewhere that, we get an eraser and make sure that it's inclusive, because this is a big stretch that can benefit from this analysis. And I know you all agree, but thank you. Okay, what's next?
Item 17F is now item 9C, and this is an ordinance of the Board of County Commissioners amending Ordinance 89-05 as amended, the Collier County Growth Management Plan of the unincorporated area of Collier County, Florida, relating to the Rural Fringe Mixed Use District restudy, and specifically amending the future land use element and the future land use element use map and map series. Mr. Mike Bosey is here to answer questions or present.
Thank you, Amy. Mike Bosey, Planning and Zoning Director. Normally I would start with the presentation, but taking the cues from my county manager, questions or presentation, what would your preference be?
Well, I know this one was moved, so I don't know if the two commissioners that had requests want to start it off with maybe your analysis, observation, question. Anything?
A brief presentation I wouldn't be
Okay.
opposed to, if you don't mind, just because this is another all-encompassing land use overlay on 90,000 acres of our county.
And with that, I will point that this is an adoption hearing for the growth management plan for the Rural Fringe Mixed Use District. Just to give you a little bit of context, this was the first of the 4 restudies that was directed by the Board of County Commissioners in 2015. This is the last of the restudies. This would close the loop on 8 years of various planning efforts. So this has been around for a while, so I will briefly refresh. The Rural Fringe Mixed Use District, 77,200 acres. 22,373 are receiving. That's the area that we want to direct development to. There's 45,400 acres of sending. That's the blue area. Here, 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 and here. I'm sorry. That's the receiving. Your sending is your orange. Here, here, here. And that's 45,400. And your neutral is your crosshatched, which you have various areas here, here, and here. And that's just under, that's 9,427. The overall changes to, and I won't read through all of these, but basically, what it allows for, it changes to how we determine the number of TDRs. The TDRs are calculated at 4 TDRs per 5 acres. When we originally started the program, you had a base credit, you got a bonus credit, then there's a restoration and maintenance credit, and then there's a conveyance credit. The only thing we're changing related to those 4 credits is we're changing the early entry to be part of your base. So to participate in the program, you automatically get 2 TDRs per 5 acres. That's a significant change. We've removed that. We've also allowed for land to be conveyed to a nonprofit or a land trust within receiving areas. What we found, the state of Florida doesn't really accept land anymore. So when we have property owners who are looking to convey their property, they want to close the loop in the rural fringe mixed use district. The sending areas where we want to protect, they're environmentally sensitive. We've got a conveyance, the last of the TDR credits. Well, the problem is the property owners haven't been able to find an entity that would receive those lands to take care of them in perpetuity, because the state has basically taken the stance that we will not accept any further state lands because of the obligations related to the maintenance. So we're allowing the program to be land to be conveyed to not-for-profit entity or a land trust. Also allow for the city land parcels to cluster development units while retaining the 1 unit to 40 acres, meaning that what it does is just allows for the clustering of development in a much smaller footprint to protect the larger environmental lands. Related to your receiving areas, we remove the maximum, or we remove the maximum within your rural villages. Your rural villages are the highest intensity that you can get within your receiving area. And your receiving area is where we said we want development to go. Right now, you can get up to 3 units per acre within those receiving areas. But we have a limitation in terms of the acreage that can be developed to research and technology. We, through the process, want to eliminate that maximum and leave the market to decide, because those are all related to economic development uses. And the concept of the Rural Fringe Mixed Use District is the exact same concept that we had within the RLSA, the Rural Land Stewardship Area, where you've got your Long Waters, your Belmar, your Ave Maria. It's sustainability. So we want to have job creation within these areas at these residential houses. We also want to have goods and services. So the removal of that limitation makes sense to have more sustainability, more economic opportunities, because what we want, the development that moves forward, that they don't have to leave their area to have to get all their goods, services, and economic opportunities. We want some of those to be satisfied by the individual developments in which they live. Also, we have an allowance for allow for workforce housing outside of rural villages to be standalone at a higher density. We're proposing if you have a program that's proposing affordable housing, you can get up to 12.2 units per acre. Right now, the max is 3 for a village, but because we're prioritizing affordable housing, we're allowing for that to be at 12.2. And I know Commissioner McDaniels has a point that we're going to discuss it a little bit related to the affordable housing provision as well. Also, to promote economic vitality outside the rural villages, allow business and industry uses such as qualified targeted industries to be outside of your rural villages. That means job creation outside of your villages as a standalone opportunities. And also, there's an allowance to increase the density from 1 to 2 units an acre, but that's not along your Immokalee corridor. And then the amendments that were proposed in terms of the, at the time of the transmittal, was allow TDR credits for existing agriculture and conservation uses are secured by perpetual easements. But we've actually, we've incorporated with those, that has been synthesized down to a development use agreement. We've removed the minimum acreage size for cluster developments. We've eliminated the requirement for TDRs to be utilized within the urban area if you have infill development. Infill development by our future land use map says if you're under 20 acres, you're adjoined by either side with development, you get additional density. You can get 3 additional units. And the current rule says you have to utilize a TDR to utilize that. We're proposing to eliminate that. It's only been utilized twice before. It just hasn't found, the market hasn't been very receptive to it. And increased TDR demand by one of the proposals by adding a requirement that any GMP amendment that proposes to increase residential density within your urban mixed-use district or your RFMND has to utilize or shall utilize TDRs to achieve that density. And this, here's some of the recommendations that came from the Planning Commission related, it was a 5-0 vote. For a GMP amendment to increase residential densities and exception to the proposal to require the use of TDRs if a public benefit. So if there's an out, you don't have to utilize TDRs if you're proposing to increase density, residential density, if there's a public benefit. Normally what that's saying is if you're providing for affordable housing, TDRs would not be required. They also recommended that we defer a proposal to require the villages to develop anything over 300 acres. We had suggested has to be a village. The Planning Commission said, let's study that a little bit more. Let's defer that recommendation. They also deferred a proposal to create an agricultural TDR credit. One of the things we're recognizing in a neutral or you're receiving lands that do not create TDRs, if a owner wanted to reserve a parcel of land for perpetual or agricultural use for a 25-year period, they would be eligible to generate a TDR. And there was a specific area within the study area, the Bellmead area, to analyze it, do a study after the adoption of these amendments to make a determination the appropriateness of allocation for a flowway TDR, which is an additional TDR that would be added to the system for when property owners allow for flowways to enter into their property and provide written documentation and easements on their property that allows for such use. The request for the Board of County Commissioners was to remove the 1 to 2 units along, and this was from the Planning Commission's recommendation, to remove the units along Immokalee Road because it was determined that the density along Immokalee Road already is providing sufficient enough traffic. Let's pull that back. I know this, we wanted to get a little bit quicker. Here's where we're at. Like I said, if we adopt this, we're done. We'll be finalized with the amendments, and then the next step would be staff would be developing the land development code. But there's also a public study that we're going to initiate within the Bellmead area related to flowways and flowway TDRs. And with that, I know it was pretty fast and it was all over the place. But any questions that you may have related to the proposal?
Commissioner McDaniel.
Yes, I will, and I'll be looking forward to hearing our public comment here. But the concern that I've had with the Rural Fringe Mixed Use District for a long time is the incentivization for people to participate in the program and generate TDRs, and it seems counterintuitive to me that we're actually increasing densities and reducing sizes of property requisites and eliminating the necessity of the acquisition of TDRs, or at least that's what I understand. And that to me is counterintuitive for a value base for the TDR program at large.
And I understand their concern, and one of the things I will put up on the areas, the lines that
I want to draw your attention to is this number here. And that number here down here, the 10,327, is what the number of TDRs we expect will be demanded within the program. And on the top, if you had 100% participation within the program, you get to about 10,496, almost identical to what we expected demand to be. At 50%, you've got just under 6,000 TDRs.
You just have under 60 or 6,000 TDRs that we would expect to be developed. And at the transmittal hearing, one of the things that was raised was a concern that we don't have enough TDRs. We don't have enough TDRs to meet the eventual demand. So one of the things that we're trying to recognize, and what we've done within the flowway, which is adding an additional 1,200 TDRs and potentially an extra 2 TDRs per 5 acres for the restoration and maintenance credits, is add some TDRs. Eventually, what that does, though, adding TDRs to the system can devalue it can devalue your existing supply. It's all about supply and demand. When you're adding more towards your supply, the price of that supply, what the person who is looking to acquire the TDR has more options to shop at, and therefore it can lower the value of the TDRs. So it is really a push and pull. We're trying to find that balance, and we understand the concern. One of the aspects that we do have is the potential to eliminate. There's currently a regulation that says only one village could be developed as part of each of the receiving areas. We have 4 receiving areas. The proposal is to eliminate that restriction, so you have 2 of your receiving areas that are in the southern portion that staff feels would be able to support potentially 2 villages. So that has an offsetting way of creating additional demand, which will have a proportionate effect towards the supply issue that we were talking about. So on one hand, there is a devaluation, but on the other hand, we're trying to increase the demand for those, and therefore that helps the pricing power for the individuals with the supply. I know that was a long economic way of getting around the question, but
You did really well. And you did get around the question. In my perception, by the creation of more TDRs on the basis of the environmental cleanup and such, there has to be an economic value for that to in fact transpire. And you yourself have said that the addition of a TDR for the transfer of ownership from the owner to a not-for-profit is virtually impossible nowadays. And I think the compensation there was to move the base units from 1 to 2 in order to help compensate for that, if I'm not mistaken. And then you're adding 2 more on the cleanup side for the environmental aspects.
adding 2 more potentially for the restoration.
That does. And did we do an economic study or a study on a cost basis with regard to the potential exposure there for a property owner to do, and knowing that everybody's different, there's a certain amount that you really can't encapsulate, but did we do a study there with regard to that value or theoretical incentivization for more TDRs?
We didn't do a specific economic valuation of the expected, the individual action of the creation of the 2 additional in terms of the impact on the terms of the price, but we did do an update in terms of, as I've showed you, what we expect the demand would be and what we expect the demand and the supply to be with the additional units. So we've just kind of at least tried to align them in more closer proximity without getting into really an economic analysis to see what's the effect of these changes on the value of a TDR. Right now, the value of a TDR is trading around around 15 to 16.5. There used to be a requirement where $25,000 was the minimum for a base credit. This Board of County Commissioners directed us to eliminate that. Basically, TDRs now float at market rate. That market rate turns to about 15, 16.5. We haven't done an analysis to see, are these proposed changes, is that going to increase the value or decrease the value by any degree?
Now, and then the other question I had to do with the affordable housing component and the elimination of TDRs there. Does that not, in my mind, does that not devalue the market value of existing TDRs?
And as we discussed yesterday, it has that potential. Remember, though, the proposed density for an affordable housing project is 12.2. Without the affordable housing, your max density is 3 units per acre. So you're potentially 9.2 units above what any TDRs could ever be expenditure under the current program. What we did talk about was if you do have an affordable housing project, we don't have it clarified that any market rate units that would be proposed as part of that development is exempt from TDRs, and there was a possible discussion of requiring those market rate units to have some participation within the TDR program. We have had some conversation with Mr. Mulhare and his client related to some of the projects they have moving forward. We recognize that we don't have a specific recommendation in terms of what that number would be in terms of the market rate that's affiliated with an affordable housing project. We do recognize that because it's an affordable housing project, there's only so much extra cost that you can add to the unit before that subsidization is not realized by the project. But what we were proposing in discussion with Mr. Mulhare and the development community was to work on to maybe request for a continuation till the next meeting and have a suggestion to the Board of County Commissioners that we could arrive upon that could address that very issue of making the market rates at least participate in some way with the consumption of TDRs, because the program is to preserve your environmentally sensitive lands, to make whole the property owners who had the development rights restricted. And the way that is done is having those TDRs, the TDRs that those city land owners created, to be consumed by the market. So if we would have some accountability for those market rate units within affordable housing projects to have to participate in some consumption of TDRs, we understand that is it furders the overall goal of the program in a more holistic way.
Just as you and I talked yesterday, that's one of that I'd like to. Of course, we want to hear from the public, but I think that's a prudent move for us, because that's in the other point that I made, that I talked with you about yesterday, and I don't know if this is an appropriate time, though it seems like I'm adept at bringing things up at an inappropriate time. But this is a closed loop system, and so one of the things I'd like to see explored sooner than later is the availability of allowing TDRs to be transferred out, and even incentivize their utilization outside of the system. So I'm done.
Mr. Miller, how many public comments do we have?
We have 2 registered speakers, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Your first speaker is Lisa Lefko. She'll be followed by Bob Mulhare.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Lisa Lefko, CEO, Habitat for Humanity. And I'm here to plead for you to be open to this amendment. This has great benefit for Habitat for Humanity, as it will incentivize affordable housing. This is a key area for us as we look at how to manage affordable housing. You've been tackling this intractable issue for some time now. We've made some great progress with other incentives and amendments to land development code that you've passed recently. I think appropriate that earlier today, seems like a long, long time ago, but this morning we acknowledged April as Fair Housing Month. And so here, as we talk about how we manage our growth in Collier County, and particularly provide avenues for developers like Habitat for Humanity, one more reminder that we are your sole provider of access to affordable home ownership. Yesterday in the newspaper, there was a front page article about cost of housing in Collier County continuing to escalate, even as other communities in Florida are leveling off or even going down, as our neighbors in Lee County are experiencing. Median sales price last month at $640,000. The influx of over 55 members of residents in our community, which again turns around and puts additional stress on our workforce and our service industry. So the issue of access to housing that is affordable is not going to go away, but this is one thing that provides an incentive for developers like Habitat for Humanity. We do have opportunities to enter into partnerships that I think would be, again, incentivized by this LDC amendment, Growth Management Amendment. And so I urge you, we've been studying this just like we identified in the previous issue, that we've been studying this for a long, long time. We've put a lot of work, a lot of effort into this. And this is a successful way for us to move into a smart growth future. So please, let's pass this amendment and let it do its work so that we can continue to make this community better and stronger. Thank you for your time and thank you for your service.
Your second and final speaker is Bob Mulhare.
Good afternoon. For the record, Bob Mulhare with Hole Montez. I represent 7 or 8, maybe 10 landowners in the rural fringe, collectively upwards of 10,000 acres of land. It has been a long time because I fondly remember working with Bruce Anderson, who he and I and he was a great land use attorney, and Bruce and I together worked on behalf of a coalition of landowners in the rural fringe, and we prepared a white paper. We delivered it to the Board of County Commissioners, and that became the basis for the board's recommendation for a restudy. We thought we were going to be first of the 4. We ended up being last. So it's been a long time. I just wanted to point out a couple of things. I think it would be a good idea maybe to give us, maybe to your next meeting, to look at it. I can speak with my clients, I can speak with staff in terms of addressing, Commissioner McDaniel, the issue you raised as it relates to utilizing or not utilizing any TDRs with respect to an affordable housing density bonus. With respect to the cost of restoration, I have talked to a number of my clients. We did provide staff with one actual analysis, but I can tell you, and this would be anecdotal, but except for the one report we did provide, which is factual, the cost is anywhere from $5,000 to maybe $7,000 or $8,000. Depends on the nature of the exotics and whether you got to move dirt, so on and so forth. So you can see that on 5 acres, you're really starting to approach the value.
$5,000 to $7,000 per acre.
Per acre. So I think that bonus makes sense. You do want to slightly incentivize that. You want people to go in there and be willing to spend the money to remove those exotics. These higher density, this 12.2, I don't think you'll see a lot of projects coming in at 12 units per acre, because that would be almost 100% affordable housing. Typically what you get is somewhere between 4 and 6 units per acre. Those also at that density will need to be in a location where central water and sewer is available, out on the East Trail, obviously Immokalee Road for a certain distance. Just looking to see. You know, one thing that might be helpful, assuming in 2 weeks we come up with a resolution and this is supported, is that perhaps staff can provide the board with an annual or maybe biannual report about the utilization of TDRs. We could monitor that, because there may need to be some adjustments in that over time. I know what your concern is. Your concern is that the sending landowners who lost their development rights went from 1 per 5 to 1 per 40. Now, 23 years ago, the way that they were being legally compensated was through this TDR program. So we do need to make sure that it works.
He doesn't have to be time constrained.
Sorry.
Not really.
Thank you.
Or
Any
no.
questions?
Did you get done what you needed to say?
That's it. Yep. Thank you.
Any questions by anybody?
Well, I'd like to I'd like to make a motion if you're ready.
Go ahead, sir.
I'll make a motion to continue this for 2 weeks and fill in those 2 gaps that we were talking about with regard to the utilization of the TDRs for housing affordability.
Okay, so we got a motion to not approve amending this ordinance, but to delay it for 2 weeks and bring it back with more detail. Is that it in a nutshell? I second that.
That's a nice nutshell.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, so this doesn't pass, but the delay for 2 weeks to bring it back with more detail does. So, okay,
We'll move it to the next agenda.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rosie.
Commissioners, that brings us almost to our 2:30 time certain. So by the time I read these all in and make a couple of opening comments, I think we're good to go.
Okay,
These are items 11B, 11C, and 11D, and I will read them in. First is 11B, is a recommendation to approve First Amendment to developer agreement with Rural Neighborhoods, Inc. to develop housing at the former Golden Gate Golf Course. Its companion item 11C is a recommendation to approve Collier County Standard Form long-term ground lease with Rural Neighborhoods, Inc. to develop housing at the former Golden Gate Golf Course and authorize necessary budget amendments. And lastly, item 11D is a recommendation to approve and authorize the chairman to sign a state housing initiative partnership sponsor agreement between Collier County and Renaissance Hall at Old Course LLC in the amount of $1,500,000 for new construction of rental housing units at the Golden Gate Golf Course, and authorize the county manager or designee to execute any and all ship-related restrictions for this property in accordance with this agreement and project. You're going to have a number of staff people that are going to come up to speak, as well as other representatives and partners for this project. But I'm going to move to the podium.
Oh,
Hello. So, I know. Wow.
state your name for the record,
This feels different.
and you have 3 minutes.
That's perfect. So just before we get started with the presentations and the conversation, just wanted to position this a little bit for the board. We actually were working on these items for the last board meeting, and at the last minute, literally, 5:30 on Wednesday night before print, we noticed, very diligent staff members noticed some changes that we weren't sure had been thoroughly vetted by all of our partners. And of course, as you know, the partnership is incredibly important to the success of this project. It's been a long time coming, and while we are all incredibly frustrated with how long it's taken, we do not want to put documents on the agenda that we are not all comfortable with. Fast forward us to where we stand now. We have documents on the agenda. And I think we're going to have a good conversation about that. Our intent is we focused a lot on getting the very important language squared away in these agreements. And frankly, we have some housekeeping matters that need to be attended to. There are 2 specific changes that Mr. Finn is going to cover with you that are different than the document that is in the agenda package, as well as a number of cleanup issues, punctuation, misplaced ands, underlines, addresses, as well as any input that you may have into these documents. We will clean all of this up with the assistance of the county attorney and bring it back for final approval at the next agenda meeting, unless the board feels strongly one way or the other that we're going to take a different direction. But I wanted to get that out there so that everyone feels free to give their input to this. If there are substantive changes, we'll address those. Or if we arrive at a different place when we get to the end of this conversation and feel that we can make these adjustments and get a clean version, we'll discuss that with the county attorney.
Commissioner Saunders?
Quick question for the county manager and I guess the county attorney. You've just gone through that there's going to be some technical changes, some addresses, ands, and that sort of thing. We can make those changes today. I don't want to start off with, well, we're going to continue this for 2 weeks. I'd rather start off with, well, we've got some technical changes. If everybody's okay with them, and we got all the parties here, we just approve those today. with those technical changes, and the county attorney can draft up the document. So I don't think we need to continue this, and I certainly would prefer not to continue it.
Certainly understand, sir. And obviously, we have two options on the table. Should the board have additional changes that they want to make after everything that they hear, we do have option one, which is 2 weeks further. Or if they are simply the technical changes as well as the two, which still are still really, they're not substantive changes, they're more clarifications, they just have more words. And we can make those changes, we can make that decision when we get to the end of all these presentations and conversations. So we're prepared to go either way, but I felt like it was my responsibility to come up here and let you know exactly how this had transpired. We don't like messy agenda items, and most certainly don't like items placed on the change sheet with, you know, a dozen ands and periods and question marks and things like that. It's untidy.
Yeah.
All right, so with that, I will start this off. I believe Mr. Giblin may be first up, or Mr. Finn. Mr. Finn's first up, and I will sit down.
Thank you, ma'am. Troy, can you pull up that other one real quick? I appreciate that. And Edward Finn, Deputy County Manager. This item's a little untidy. It is, however, kind of critical, one more, critical to the financing on the project and the timeliness of the project. So the board's indulgence, if they feel like providing that, would be much appreciated. It's in Golden Gate Golf Course, Troy. It is the one that deals with item 11C, ground lease changes. Thank you, sir. Outstanding. So this item is actually the second one in this group. The first one the board's actually going to look at is going to be the developer agreement. Going through this, I'm going to just kind of give you a little heads up or advanced look at what this lease does. It mirrors the original Rural Neighborhoods Developer Agreement dated November 10, 20, and it includes the amendments the board's going to see today. The term of the lease is for 99 years. One of the slight adjustments to this is to reduce the acreage from 25 to 23.36, and that has to do with the greenway on the golf course. There's a nominal rent of $10 a year. The rural neighborhoods, in accordance with this agreement, has 45 days to provide us a timeline after this is done. The county can terminate the lease if rural neighborhoods is unable to secure its financing, finally, Rural Neighborhoods is required to diligently pursue construction once it commences and have it completed within 30 months. So relative to the published agenda, there's just a handful of changes that need to be made, a couple of corrections, largely spelling and Scrivener's nominal things. Of the couple of changes, this is the one that could be considered a little bit material. And this is just designed to provide some further assurances relative to financing and whatnot as to everyone involved in operating this property being responsible for what's identified in this paragraph. And the same here with liens and mortgages. This is, as Attorney Klatzkow would say, is a kind of a belt and suspenders. The proposed addition, just belt and suspenders, the concept of the exception. And this is to ensure that we have proper language in here for our federal grants. So as the board goes through this, if there are some changes to this item, we will, of course, incorporate those. And the board will have an opportunity to decide whether the changes that we've talked about are of a nature that they're willing to allow us to make those adjustments, of course, under the guidance of Attorney Klatzkow. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Giblin. Thank you.
Thank you. And Troy, could you bring up the original presentation? For the record, Cormac Giblin, your interim Economic Development and Housing Director. I'm going to be briefing you on the three companion items today that are 11B, 11C, and 11D. 11B is the First Amendment to the developer agreement with rural neighborhoods. 11C is the long-term land lease that Ed just gave some of the highlighted changes to. And 11D is the $1.5 million ship sponsorship agreement that Ms. Christy Sontag will address later in the presentation. Just some history here. On December 13th, 2019, we publicly advertised invitation to negotiate on 20-7698. And on June 9th, 2020, the board selected rural neighborhoods and directed staff to begin negotiations with the developer. And then on November 10th, 2020, the board approved that developer agreement. The first of your items, which is 11B, is the first amendment to the developer agreement. This amendment does basically three things. It removes the 1.64 acre of greenway from the leased area. It's basically the required greenway band. Rural neighborhoods decided it, and the county both feel that it doesn't make sense to include the required greenway in the leased area, that is going to be rural neighborhoods' responsibility, while we're already maintaining the golf course and the other areas of greenway around that area. The second thing it does, it provides clarifications and corrections to Exhibit B due to the proposed inclusion of federal and/or state grant funding. It firms up the total number of units. The original developer agreement had a range of units. It had a minimum and a maximum. Well, now that we're a couple of years down the road and the developer has done their site planning and architectural work, the number of units is pretty firm at 252 ESP units and 120 senior units. It also adds lower income units and eliminates those units that have incomes above grant guidelines. When this project was first conceived, it was not contemplated to include any federal or state grant money in it. As times have changed, interest rates, construction costs, et cetera, there has become the need to incentivize it a little bit more with federal and state grants. Those grants do come with strings attached and certain target incomes that can only be used in the project. So what the developer agreement does is basically lower some of those income limits. And then it clarifies and accelerates the construction timeline. As Ed mentioned, we will receive a schedule within 45 days of today, and the developer has 6 months from then to secure financing. This would be the unit affordability breakdown in the revised developer agreement. The ESP housing section would have 22 units at 50% area median income, 28 units at 80% area median income, and 202 units at 100% area median income for 252 total. And in the senior housing section, there would be 12 units at 28% AMI and 108 units at 60% AMI. The entire development would be 372 units total. The terms of the next item, 11C, is the long-term ground lease. As Ed mentioned, some of the technical changes that we need to do. The highlights, again, are that it's a 99-year lease of 23.36 acres at the golf course. The county can terminate the lease if rural neighborhoods cannot secure a financial commitment for the initial phase within 6 months of today. And rural neighborhoods is required to diligently pursue construction and complete it within 30 months of the commencement. And then the third item in this package of combined items is 11D, which is the ship sponsorship agreement for $1.5 million. This project was reviewed or presented at the county's countywide application cycle that was made available between January 6th and February 11th. It was reviewed and ranked by your review and ranking committee on March 10th and 11th, and it received the highest ranking of all of the presentations that were received in this cycle. This agreement supports the permit fees, pre-development, and construction costs to support 50 ship-assisted units within the 252-unit development. 22 of those would be low income, and 22 would be very low income, and 28 would be very low income. The property is income restricted through this agreement for 30 years, and Renaissance Hall at the Old Course LLC will be responsible for providing and executing the land use restriction agreement, the promissory note, and mortgage. Did Kristen? So with that's our staff recommendation on all three items, is to approve the first amendment to the developer agreement, approve the the standard long-term lease agreement with rural neighborhoods with the additional clarifications that Ed put into the record today, and approve the ship sponsorship agreement. And that's what we've got.
Do you have any other speakers or anything else?
Troy, do we have any?
I have no registered speakers on this item, Mr. Chair.
We do have our representatives here, both from the developer as well as from the Community Foundation. They may want to make some comments.
Let me go to my colleagues, Commissioner McDaniel.
Yeah, just a quick note. I had it in my brain somewhere that when Collier County was contributing taxpayer dollars to a project that it was going to be held in an affordable status in perpetuity, and I saw that last bullet point flow through there that said we were only doing this for 30 years.
That's with respect to the ship loan or
Just the ship loan
grant?
aspect.
The entire thing is not locked up for 99 years.
Question answered. I'll move for approval.
Got a motion to approve. Do I have a second? Or a question? Commissioner Saunders.
I just want to make, we have representatives here from the foundation, and we have representatives here from the developer. I think I saw Mr. Kirk. I'd at least like to see a nod of the head of both that these agreements are consistent with what you need. And it looks like, just for the record, everybody's saying, yes, this is what we need. So if the motion was to approve all three of these items, then I'll second that motion if it hadn't been seconded.
Okay, got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
County manager's flinching.
Yep. We need the motion to reflect that it will be those, including those two changes to the lease document, as well as the Scrivener's error changes, and anything else the county attorney feels. We'll work that through the county attorney, but if you could amend that motion to include those changes that were provided.
You have a question?
Yeah.
He's got a question.
Okay, Commissioner Hall.
I have a question for Mr. Kirk. There's no doubt about it, we're all rooting for you. But, 6 months to get your financing, and this project's been on and on and on again. And I know that the foundation has concerns, and they're rooting for you as well. So kind of fill us in where you're at, what your plan is, and where you see yourself going forward from here, please, sir.
Yes, Steve Kirk, Rural Neighborhoods, for the record. Execution of the lease today and the financial grant commitments are step one in the timetable. Firm commitment of nearly $60 million worth of principal loans has not been possible in the absence of site control and the commitment of the secondary capital. So this is a big step today in terms of doing that. Credit markets are in turmoil, as you heard this morning, with the other portion of the golf course. But our successful underwriting requires that we finish a couple of other steps, but we're in good standing. So let me just walk through several of those. Probably one of the most important one is the approval of the ERP, the Environmental Review Permit for the property, which the county is scheduled to submit in the next several weeks on behalf of the overall site. We have an interim ERP pending in our building permit application, but we will end up deferring to the overall site. We have invested $1.5 million to date in the project, so we're fully committed. And for a charitable housing group, that's not for the faint of heart. We have the preliminary indication from U.S. HUD, who is our loan guarantee, to Prudential Real Estate, who is our lender. And so we are invited to submit our application for the firm commitment approximately July 1st. We are working with DeAngelis Diamond, who is a selected contractor, to get their firm construction price in advance of that date. And so from a timetable perspective, I think our hope right now is to close in September and to try to commence construction in September, October. But we are within striking distance. There are some additional funding applications potentially coming to this board in a future month from other applications that are being met that are passed through to the county, and hopefully we're in good shape. Architectural plans and site development plans are in place in the county and under review.
Perfect, thank you.
I'll amend my motion to reflect the wishes of staff and the county manager and county attorney.
And I think I made the second, so I'll amend the second. To
Yep.
that effect.
Okay, I think we're all in favor.
Thank you, commissioners.
Do you want us to vote again?
Oh, do they need a, Jeff, they need a vote, or,
No, we're good.
thank you.
I want to recognize somebody in the audience here, and she just stood up. We have the CEO of the Collier Community Foundation. Boy, I tell you what, their organization has just done so much good since the hurricane, before the hurricane, after the hurricane. So, Eileen, I just wanted to tell you it's an honor to have you here. She and I, a few days back, were on Marco, and the JW Marriott collected well over $100,000 after Hurricane Ian to give to the Collier Community Foundation to support all of the great philanthropic efforts that Eileen and her team support and lead and help. And so that was a great a charitable donation by the JW Marriott as they collected money from customers and helping their own employees. So I know you're a big piece also too of this affordable housing. You've got your support in your hands in so many different things. But before you exited, I just wanted to recognize you, and it was an honor to be with you, to watch you accept the check. And I know you're going to put that money from the JW Marriott on Marco to such good work. And we look forward to your leadership on this project as well. And you let us know if something's sort of going off track a bit, because we need your help and guidance as well as we push this forward and have it be another great thing for the county. But thank you, ma'am, and to all of the people that you represent in your organization. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so this might be a good time for a break, and then let's come back here. Let's just come back here right at 3.
3 o'clock.
Okay.
Chair, you have a live mic.
Okay. First, all the citizens that are in the audience that maybe you haven't, you haven't been here since this morning, just to reiterate, please shut off your cell phones, okay, or put them on silent so we don't have to hear, musical songs in between testimony from folks. And also, too, we run a very professional meeting here, as I know you would appreciate as well. So as I said at the outset of our meeting, when we had some other, controversial topics that came up, this isn't the Jerry Springer show. So when somebody comes to the podium, please give them as much respect as you want when you come to the podium. So cheering and hollering and things like that aren't helping anybody up here. We want to have a professional conversation. We want to hear from all sides. And I've said before from this seat, and I know my colleagues agree with me, public comment is the most important part of what we do, not only in this room, but in America, right? There's places where nobody gets to do this. Having said that, let me set the table a little bit. We all got probably all of your emails. I know I answered every single one. And if you haven't heard from me yet, you will, okay? But I think there's a little confusion in your neighborhood as to what we're doing today, okay? So today we're not, when we all got an email saying, can't believe you commissioners are doing this, or we haven't done anything. We're not voting on doing something tomorrow. It's a process. And although I don't think that's going to change anyone here wanting to come to the podium, I'm going to ask our county attorney to summarize actually what we're doing today, because 95% of the emails we got, with all due respect, jumped to sort of step 99. We're not there yet, okay? Nothing has happened yet, okay? We're just looking at possibilities and ideas and possible proposals, and your board's involved. And if you think your board's not representing your position, then talk to the board you elected, okay? And we can't be your board. We're the Board of County Commissioners. You have a Riviera Gulf Estates board, and there's plenty of time to do all that. This isn't the final meeting. This is the first meeting. So I just want to say that. So it might change a little bit of your words of coming up here saying, please don't do this today. I can't believe you're about to vote to do A, B, C, D, and E. It will have these negative effects, or maybe you're for something. That's not what today is happening. So, I know what you might have read on social media, and we got all the feedback here, but I just say that to set the table. Having said that, our county attorney is the one who's in this room here who's been most involved in the process here. So I just asked Mr. Kladskow, I think a good start would be, please separate rumor from fact and summarize exactly what is on the agenda today for us to vote on, and what it would do if we voted yes on it, and what it wouldn't do. Is that a good setup?
Yes, sir.
Okay, over to you.
This is the first of a two-step process, potentially. This one is for the board to review a mediated settlement agreement that we have with the owner of a golf course, the Riviera Golf Course Homeowners Association, for a Bert Harris claim that was filed by the owner against the county. Ms. Patterson and I attended a mediation along with the HOA. The vast bulk of the negotiations were between the HOA and the developer. The purpose of this mediated settlement agreement is to set up a financing vehicle that the community can purchase this golf course if that's what they want to. That vehicle would be either a special district or an MSBU. I will be working with the attorneys for the HOA to set up something that is acceptable to the community for that. Now, this is going to be a benefit unit, not a taxable unit. All right. By that I mean that instead of getting your typical way we do things is through taxes, MSTUs, this is going to be a benefit unit, so there'll be assessments. Because if you're living on the golf course, you're getting a better benefit from this deal than if you're not living on this golf course. All right. It also brings in more people because a lot of these homes have been homesteaded and save our homes, and they don't really pay very much in taxes. If the board approves this framework, Ms. Patterson will be employing a professional who will go out and he will calculate what the proper assessments should be from a house-to-house standpoint. Now, there is the potential that these assessments might go beyond the four corners of the Riviera Golf Estates, because the Riviera Golf Estates has a drainage system that benefits more than Riviera. It also benefits some of the surrounding communities. How they benefit will be calculated in this report. We obviously don't want to start this unless the board is comfortable with this process. There will come a point in time, hopefully in 60 days, where we will have that information. I know Ms. Patterson is considering potential for conservation Collier monies to come into this because there's some really nice property here that it might be a benefit for conservation Collier. And we'll be coming back to the board with the proposed district, assuming that we get there. It could be that the HOA says, no, we don't want this. We've heard back from our community and it's too much money. And that'll be the end of it, and that'll be the end of the mediated settlement, and then Ms. Yovanich and I will go back to doing what we do in court. Again, this mediated settlement is almost exclusively for the benefit of the community, which gives them a financing mechanism that they can utilize to purchase this golf course if that is what they want to do. All right. And again, at the end of the day, if they say we don't want this, that's fine. We'll just move on with the litigation.
So am I correct here in saying, to use your words, the end of the day is not today?
No, the end of the day is not today.
So if we voted, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, and I want to hear from everybody. But today, all we would be voting on is, do we want to move forward to continue to explore this option? It would come back to us at some point with more detail, and we might hate it, they might hate it, we might love it, they might love it. It doesn't matter, but that's all we'd be doing today is to move forward on exploring the possible proposal and bringing us more detail as to what it would look like. Correct?
Absolutely correct.
Okay. So everybody understand that? Okay. The other thing too is, and I will say this, and it's sort of a summary from sort of what I know my colleagues feel. The county is not trying to force anything down your throat. We're trying to, if you hate it, this is totally up to you. And I say this as a summary of a lot of emails that said, can't believe the county is so stupid that they're making us do. We're not making you do anything. But just remember what you're going to hear today. There's lots of options for that property. And a lot of the emails that I know I personally got thought it was this or nothing, and it's not. It's this or lots of other things that you may or may not like. So everybody just listen with an open mind. Let's all be professional here, and let's just remember what would be decided here would just be to either move forward to bring us more information and explore one of many possible options, or it could totally die today if nobody even wants to take the time to know all the details and facts of this one possible option for your community. And I mean, I feel really close to Riviera Golf Estates. You're not in District 1 anymore, but used to be, and see a lot of familiar faces out here. Don't think for a second anybody up here is trying to force anything down your throat. We're trying to think out of the box and look at options. And if you think they're all the wrong options, in the end, the decision is yours. Nobody's going to force feed something here. It's just that, there could be other options that happen that you don't have as much say in. So, I just say that to set the table. So having said that, how do we want to proceed? Do we want to, I know I've got commissioners lit up maybe that want to make some opening statements. Let me go to Commissioner Kowal, since this is his district, and then I'll go to Commissioner McDaniel.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make it clear that, I did receive a lot of emails and correspondences in reference to this, and this isn't my district. And I tried to convey it best I could. I answered some of the emails and some things, and I just was letting people kind of know up front that this was not a vote today to purchase a golf course. I just wanted to make that clear, and that this is a process. And part of this process, like the attorney just said, is that we don't really know the public benefit the purchasing this golf course can ultimately be. There's other communities that, for stormwater management, this golf course does have some use for that. And so we don't even know what the footprint would be and how many rooftops. I know there's 690 rooftops in Riviera Golf Estates, but that may be a larger number, and the whole burden may not be upon Riviera Golf Estates when it's all said and done. But until we know exactly what that footprint consists of, and other avenues like county management has been, the manager is talking about, with Conservation Collier maybe purchasing parts of this too, and that alleviating some of the cost on you as the stakeholders here. I just want to make sure, and then I also said, and I spoke to the HOA at Riviera Golf Estates, when it does get to that point, and we're getting closer and closer to this, to come back to this board up here, this body, that I would feel comfortable if they go back to their community, and whatever other rooftops that are included, if they're in part of that footprint, that they take a vote, and they bring that vote back to us, and then we move on from there. So I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
Yes, well, and thank you, because you shed light on something that I wasn't able to get in this information, that there's 690 homes in Riviera as we speak. In county manager, without holding your feet to the fire in any way, shape, or form, we talked a little bit yesterday about the viability of this settlement agreement having positive impacts on a larger area than the subdivision of Riviera. If you had to guess, how many more homes would be included in that?
I couldn't even make a guess, but I think that two prong is one is where the benefit may extend to, to the north potentially. I don't know. We have to look at the flow patterns of the water in this area. But the second part that we want to look at also is how this system continues to interact with LASIP. LASIP is central to this area. It's squeezed between two major components of LASIP, and how this may benefit the LASIP system long term is another avenue that we need to look at and pursue.
So, round numbers, you don't know how many more homes could be brought into this overlay?
We don't, but we're going to engage with a consultant, and whether it's that one or that one plus the consultants that designed the LASIP system originally and have done work for us and on the LASIP system since are still here. It's a firm we work with regularly, so I'm suggesting that we bring them on to help us with looking at this area and what the potential benefits are.
And thank you. And County Attorney, has there been any discussion with the secondary portion of this, if in fact we move through the settlement and if in fact we go forward with the MSTU and the non-ad valorem assessment? How long can we amortize that expense out in order to recoup it? Is there a...
Well, I would divert Mr. Finn on this, but that question will bring back to the board whether or not the board wants to, in essence, hold the paper on this, for a length of time, or if we want to take out our position through commercial paper. And
plus minus, though, how long can that amortization be?
Well, if it's with the board, it could be up to 30. It could be 30 years. Commercial paper, I believe, it tends to be 10, 15 years.
40 years is not on the realm.
We just did a 99-year lease, so yes.
Okay. Well, and because where I was going with this, with the process, if the mediated settlement ended up being the 5.8 and it was only exposed to the residents of Riviera, that's $8,500 plus minus a home on a special assessment, and a 40-year amortization is $212 a year.
Like a pizza a month.
That's math. So necessarily, somebody, I see Amy's grabbing her calculator, so she'll correct me if I'm wrong, but and that was no interest expense associated and so on and so forth, but necessarily it will only go down from there if we're successful in ascertaining that there's conservation Collier value, that the settlement amount comes down. And then if there are other folks, I know we had a gentleman that spoke, Dan, I don't know where he's at, he was here before, other communities that are in proximity that can benefit from this via the LASIP program, which is the drainage process in Laley. Was I fairly close? Okay, I got the thumbs up. I was fairly close. So the worst case scenario, it's a $212 a year exposure that gets reduced as and if conservation Collier comes in, and as and if a greater benefit area is determined, then we can defray that expense.
I got a question though for the county attorney, and then we'll proceed unless there's other questions. So before the mediation, one of the fears, one of the options that was on the table is this current golf course owner didn't want to have a golf course anymore, and so one of the options was to could he build houses, could he build apartments, and or what have you. that's still a possible option, correct? I mean, that didn't get thrown away, and it's this or nothing, correct?
That is a possibility for the future, yes.
Right. Okay. So I just want citizens to know that. I mean, I really salute the team that got in a room and tried to come up and mediated very successfully an alternative option to that. But a real option that's still on the table is if this totally fell through and we didn't allow it to continue looking into it as a possibility and bringing us back something with a little bit more meat on the bone. That option always sits out there that land could be developed. And granted, there's a lot of moving parts with it, but it's not undevelopable, for lack of a better term, land, correct?
We're running out of land, so stuff that used to never be looked at is being developed as we speak. And I have no doubt that the long term, this golf course will get developed into something unless the community wants
This
to buy it.
possibility, then it preserves that land. So basically, the investment that would be being made by this community or a much larger community would trump a large development that definitely could go on that property, correct?
In the long term, yes.
Yeah. Okay. What's that? Oh, just instead of saying, no, I didn't mean President Trump, but okay, let's proceed. So, yeah, I think everybody knows what the word Trump means.
Speakers?
Yeah, do we have anybody from the county staff that has anything else to add, or did we sort of package it well?
Jeff and I are
Anything
the
else?
two, and we'll continue with, as you hear the speakers, and if there's questions about the
Okay.
stormwater aspects, conservation, Collier, any of those things. We do have the legal teams from both Riviera and from the golf course ownership
Okay.
here in the room as well.
Mr. Miller, how many speakers do we have signed up?
We have 16 registered speakers for this item, sir.
Okay. So what I would say to, go ahead, sir.
I was just going to ask the speakers, please queue up two at a time, one at each speaker. I'll call two names so we can move through this expeditiously.
And if you hear somebody say something that you were going to say almost verbatim, you can always just raise your hand and say, already said, and move on. But, no pressure at all. We're here to hear from public speakers, but you do have that option so that you don't come up and say, well, somebody that just stole my thunder. Then you don't have to say that if you choose not to. Okay, Mr. Miller.
One final reminder, speakers, please start your comments by stating your name. Our first speaker will be Tricia Campbell, and she will be followed by Alan Carpenter.
Oh, there he is.
Me again. Tricia Campbell, President, Riviera Golf Estates Homeowners Association. We, as the Board of Directors for Riviera Golf Estates, have a fiduciary responsibility to abide by our governing documents and to make the right decisions for the health, wealth, and safety of our community. At March 28th board meeting, the board Secretary Alan Carpenter and I informed the residents that we were invited to the April 17th Bert Harris mediation between Riviera Golf Course and county officials. The observation turned into participation. After 15 rounds of discussion, the solution to the settlement was brought to the table to form the independent special district. Again, as I said before, we as a Board of Directors for Riviera Golf Estates have a fiduciary responsibility for the health, wealth, and safety of our community. With that being said, the Riviera Board of Directors feels that this settlement is the best option for Riviera Golf Estates and our surrounding neighbors. Is it without concern? No, it is not. Is it without questions? No, it is not. But the land will not be developed. Free of excess traffic, free of excess noise, free of years of disruption, and the land will be free of work trucks and the unknown. Our community and our surrounding neighbors will have the peaceful area that we have had since 1973. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Alan Carpenter. He'll be followed by Richard New. Mr. Carpenter's been seated additional minutes from David Bartos. Can you raise your hand, sir? Also, Phyllis Bartos and George Dance. So Mr. Carpenter will have a total of 12 minutes.
I won't take 12 minutes, but I did want to say in more detail what the basis of our support was in the community, which Patricia Campbell, our president, discussed, why we support this agreement in principle, the framework of it, and of course, what the details are going to be downstream. We know this is just an agreement in principle or an agreement with many conditions, but the devil is in the detail, and there's a lot of work to be done still. And we are dedicated to work with county staff in accomplishing that. I think Tricia mentioned that we think this is the best outcome for this community. As many of you know, we've been involved in this discussion with the landowner for probably 15, 20 years now overall, and more intensely over the last 5 to 6 years. I want to acknowledge a few people before we move on. I want to acknowledge the fact that we've had a lot of input. Our Board of Directors relies heavily on community feedback. We have formed a working group. Our golf course work group consists of many longtime residents of the community who understand some of the issues and challenges, both in terms of the stormwater issues we've been facing over years, as well as the threat to the development and the loss of peace and quiet in our neighborhood. The directors themselves, who are volunteers, I think I can appreciate more what you all do as public servants, having been on a board for several years now. We do our best to try to represent the majority opinion. We don't always please everybody. We rely upon our HOM members to give us feedback. We regularly poll them, provide opportunities for input at board meetings. We allow open dialogue at every board meeting, which are held at least monthly. And of course, our attorneys, Catherine Berkey from Becker, and also Michael, who will speak today, Michael Witt, who will speak today from Hahn Loser. I would like to also thank the Collier staff and the legal group for allowing us the opportunity to participate, and also to the LA, Minnesota representatives and Attorney Yovanovitch, who allowed us to participate in the discussion. Because we know this is a very difficult problem. There are at least 3 parties of interest here: the landowner, the county, and our community. And it's hard enough to negotiate a 2-way agreement, never mind a 3-way agreement. As Tricia mentioned, we have a fiduciary duty to do what's in the best interest of our community. As you all know, and I won't spend a lot of time on this, but we had a lot of turnout at these intent to convert stakeholder meetings, which took place last year and is associated with the intent to convert outreach. Over 500 residents turned out to these meetings. At times they were a little tumultuous, only because people were crammed into a small facility at the first meeting, frankly, that ended up being canceled because we exceeded the capacity of the venue. In any case, there is uniform agreement expressed at these meetings that we're all concerned about the future of the floodplain and the drainage system, as well as the peace and quiet, and how it could be developed within our own community. If you've ever been out to the property, and I know Commissioners Kowal and LaCastro have been out there, you can see there's only one real road in there, and it's a 25-mile-an-hour road. It's difficult. So it would be a difficult place to develop. On the other hand, we don't discount the possibilities that it could be developed with enough engineering skills that exist today. In fact, that opportunity still exists. We conducted a survey of residents, and I say this only to validate what our board's position is. We took a survey of our residents as recently as 6 months ago, and we asked them, who would you like to ultimately control the future of this land? And virtually 60% of the people said Riviera. And well, that's in the context of us not even owning the land. That's a pretty bold position to take. The other 25%, which was the county itself, and I think amongst those, 85% of everyone felt at that point that it was an opportunity for the county and the association to work a solution. That same questionnaire, which was taken, showed that 90% of respondents supported the concept of Riviera trying to negotiate to acquire the property. The landowner did offer the property to us at $6.5 million, which is beyond the reach of us alone, realistically, both from a credit point of view as well as an assessment point of view. That is why we believe that the current proposal and opportunity of collaborating with the county and the current landowner to try to develop a solution based upon this settlement agreement. Our board voted 6-0. One of us was out of town on a cruise, couldn't participate. We feel strongly that this is the best resolution of this very difficult problem. Our rationale is it could decrease property values if it were developed because of the proximity of the golf course to the backyards of all the residents, as well as the traffic which goes through very small roads. And that affects everybody. The dirt and the trucking that would have to be done to raise up the land, which is currently flood zone AEAH, would have to be, several feet of dirt have to be brought in. There's a lot of noise and avoidance of difficult construction phase. The other concern, of course, is that a development might involve a non-age restricted community within our age restricted community. School buses, other types of activities that wouldn't allow our community members to continue to enjoy the freedom they have every morning to walk their dogs, to ride their bikes, and so forth. So there's a lot of loss in intangibles which come about as a result of development. Of course, the $5.8 million is a lot to people who are in a somewhat modest community in terms of income, and some are on fixed income. But it is much less than the Byrd Harris claim which was made. So indeed, it is a reasonable compromise given the different interests that are involved here. There's avoidance of continued and significant increases that come about by a settlement, which frankly would be through assessments on our HOA members. Because if we continue legal avenues, they'll be paying for it, and that, of course, will come directly out of our assessments. We look for a resolution of long-term issues we have faced with stormwater. The South Florida Water Management District currently has a noncompliance order. Once this system brought into its specification based upon the original permits issued in 1978. And we feel that working with the county is the best avenue for that to occur. We're not going to have our over 55 residents going out there digging swales and cleaning up the drain pipes, right? We know the expertise exists within the county. That's why we look forward to this partnership. Of course, we like the quiet enjoyment. We see a lot of beautiful animals, some of them endangered or threatened, such as the big cypress, foxtail squirrel, bald eagles. It's a beautiful place. Limpkins, can't name them all. There's a lot of beautiful wildlife. And of course, the settlement agreement really is a fair balance in our view, that is our board's view, based upon the interests of our community and the feedback we've gotten from them through our continued communications with them, that this is a reasonable outcome, both for the landowner to recoup and perhaps make a gain on this, a modest gain perhaps, but a gain on the land they've held for many years. That avoids litigation, which is good for the county and for us. And finally, it gives Riviera and our adjacent communities opportunities to preserve the stormwater and maintain it over a long period of time, along with the floodplain and open space. So we want to thank the county staff and the legal department for having proposed what we think is an actionable win-win-win solution for repurposing not only our golf course property, but also those perhaps of other communities who are facing similar challenges. It's not without some concerns or unknowns, let me put it that way. The boundaries of the district have to be finalized. There needs to be discussion about whether there's public use or only use by those within the district. We need to understand what the duration of the special unit will be. Is it in perpetuity? Is it until it's paid up? Who's the title holder to the property during that period, whether it's 15 years or 40 years? Who has management authority and responsibilities? I expect that you all have expertise in this, but we're babes in the woods, so we look forward to learning more about how this works. And of course, the site improvement process, because I know a lot of people would like to use this for recreational purposes, and what is going to be an allowed use, what isn't going to be an allowed use. Tax assessments, we hope, will be in proportion to benefits, as mentioned earlier by Attorney Klasko. I think it's important that people who have the greatest benefits are bearing the greater burden, and that those who feel that their benefits are lesser, that they will not be shortchanged. And finally, we look forward to collaboration on finding additional sources of funding, Collier Conservation, Resilient Florida, and other opportunities may present themselves as a means of defraying some of the cost of this. Thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Richard New. He'll be followed by Linda L. Pulver.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Richard New, 961 Charlemagne Boulevard in Naples. I, along with my wife, came into this community just about 2 years ago. And, after you work your whole life, quality of life for what you have remaining is really an important thing. And we landed just about the time that this thing was really firing up again. And it has caused a lot of consternation and concern about the future. We love our neighborhood. We have bonded with neighbors like we never have before. We love walking through the neighborhood. Shortly after we joined, I found out that there was a Wednesday morning golf outing with the men's group, and we enjoyed golfing on that golf course. Wow, what an amazing environment that we have had. It is the quality of life that anyone would enjoy. And as we have gone through this journey, attended the different meetings, the public hearings of what was transpiring, we have had a level of anxiety with the possibility of that golf course being desecrated and dedicated to a large population increase. So I'm personally grateful for the work that is being done here, that we are taking positive steps forward to secure that property, and I am grateful that that this pathway forward is a coalition, including our County Board of Commissioners, that are making this a possibility. I strongly recommend that that the district be broadened in order to share the costs equitably as much as possible. And my fondest hope would be that there will be a way to reopen the golf course for public use, whether as in Lee County's example, whether there was be some participation by the county to help open up that golf course and use it as a revenue-producing unit. So thank you again for the time and the opportunity to express my opinion. And I just commend you. I am really hopeful that this will go forward. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Linda L. Pulver. She'll be followed by Kimber Perala.
Thank you, Commissioner LaCosta, for allowing me to speak here today. I am speaking in asking you to not let this move forward today. And the reason I'm doing is I read the agreement. I listened to what you said. I've listened to what you said, sir. There's certain things in there that don't jive for me. It says Collier County will purchase this property. It says this in the agreement, including incurred, we, the community, will be paying for the property, including closing and current ad valorem and non-ad valorem taxes. That's what's in the agreement. It's in the agreement that RGE will ultimately be responsible for future and all maintenance of the property. How much is that maintenance going to be? What's the property going to be used for? This is an unknown amount. Many in our community live on fixed income. This could become a burden of an unknown amount of money. I heard your $212, sir. That's not the figure I came up when you divide out the money. If you add interest, if you add taxes, if you add closing costs, then you add maintenance on top of this. That's not going to be $212. Yes, it would be nice if this could be expanded and Collier Conservation would be involved, but this twice the community voted no on the purchase of a golf course. 2/3 of the majority said no. They said no to a 51% approval for this. If the commissioners approve the agreement as it is written, as I have read it, you will be circumventing the homeowner's right to vote for per our covenants. That's not right. In closing, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank the board of directors for their time. But I think it's time that everybody took a step back and we need to have more details on this before you move forward. So I'm asking you to not move forward till those details are known. Thank you.
Ma'am, I appreciate that. I just want to clarify something. No, just out of respect for your comments, do you realize that everything that you said has 100% merit, and by moving forward, we would get those answers? We wouldn't be approving this agreement today with all those unknowns. I just wanted to sort of clarify that because I respect so much with what you've said, but I want to make sure that you understand we're not voting on anything that you just said. We're voting to try to get those details to make a possible vote. And so I agree with you. I've got those same questions, and if we voted to move forward here, those answers would come back to us. And if we all hated those answers, then nothing. I mean, am I wrong, County Attorney? Am I summarizing something incorrectly?
No, you're absolutely correct, sir.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify that.
60-day time limit on that agreement.
Right. Okay.
And is 60 days fast for the county?
Thank you.
That's light speed.
Yeah, yeah, really. Yeah.
Before we move to our next speaker, one more reminder, please silence your cell phones. Your next speaker is Kimber Perala. She'll be followed by Marianne Herndon.
Hi, I'm Kimber Perala. Thank you for the opportunity. I live at 109 Belle Isle Circle, and I'm a board member of Riviera Golf Estates. And the opportunity that's being presented is an opportunity for us to have a voice in saving this land. It's terrific. We are retired. We're on fixed incomes. We bought our home 5 years ago, but we've been engaged in this community for 15 years. And when I say engaged, I mean we volunteer, we attend board meetings, we read the updates, we attend the social events, and do a lot more. The small minority group of residents that you are now being bombarded hearing from are uninvolved and misinformed. They don't get educated on the issues, and they need to be more informed about how important this golf course land is to our community. Rain is a given. Hurricanes are possibilities, but this golf course land was planned and developed not just for golf, but also serves as our floodplain. When in well-kept condition, it absorbed much of our flooding, especially during Irma. I saw that. Today, without proper maintenance, even during a regular rainstorm, our roads, our yards, our driveways are all flooding. If this land is raised and developed, there is no doubt that our community will flood, our home values will fall, our insurance costs will rise, and those costs are huge. What this small minority isn't complaining about is money, and we get that. But the majority of us understand this opportunity to work with the county is brilliant. We will have a voice in its maintenance and its use. We are committed to preserving this area for recreation. We're committed to keeping the floodplain clean and operational. We bought in a golf course community because we thought that would be fun. And it has been fun. We're on the 6th green. And the development plan as presented gives me a pond in my backyard. That's not so bad for me. I'm one of the luckier ones. So I am not selfishly fighting for my own view and my own best interest, but I'm fighting for the best interests of my entire community and my neighbors. This possible sentiment is so beneficial to RGE, and it has the board's full support. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Mary Ann Herndon. She'll be followed by Peter Ozinski.
Good afternoon, board members. For the record, my name is Mary Ann Herndon. I am a member of the Riviera Golf Estates Homeowner Association, and I will be affected by a 12A decision. The Homeowners Association Board of Directors of Riviera Golf Estates has taken it upon themselves to speak for 690 homeowners, senior citizens without conversation or vote. This board assumes that they speak for us, and yet they have not consulted with us. This is in no way a community decision. This is a board decision. If this settlement was to happen, it would greatly impact senior citizens who live in the 55 and older community. In the current state of our economy, many of our residents cannot afford to take on extra payments. This would force many senior citizens to sell the retirement home that they plan to live in until they died to have a tax bill affecting the sale of their home. I believe the county should be responsible for finding out if these individual homeowners really want a voluntary taxing district, or is this just the wish of an HOA board? I believe this settlement mediation proposal should be tabled until the community affected works through it and our board can prove that they have the votes backing them. We have those that are for it and those that are against it in our neighborhood, and it should be held to a vote before the RGE board of directors can speak on our behalf. The homeowners were not made aware of this settlement until this last weekend and have had no time to find out answers to our questions. Our HOA board wanted control of this golf course for many years. They lost the vote to purchase at $2 million 5 years ago. They believe that they have found a loophole to make this offer to the county without the permission and vote of the homeowners. Our board is dug into this position and will not allow discussion out of their narrative. Please help those who can't afford this to at least have a voice. I have documentation validating my claims if necessary. The way our HOA board has handled this might be considered financial elder abuse. By putting our community under this time constraint and not getting a community-wide consensus through votes, they have forced us to ask for the mercy of this board to stop this until it comes to a vote in our own community. Thank you, gentlemen, for your...
Your next speaker is Peter Ozinski. He'll be followed by Debbie McDowell. Mr. Ozinski's been seated 3 additional minutes from Peter. Is this Searson? Right there. You'll have a total of 6 minutes, sir, and you will be followed by Debbie McDowell.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. Before I say anything, I want to point out that I was a volunteer at the U.S. Open last week, and I was glad to see some of you guys come by. It was a really beautiful event, and I can see by what you're doing with resurfacing some of the courts, you're investing in a really worthy investment in the county, and I thank you. I am a member of the golf course study group and have been wrestling with this on and off for a long time. And just to get some perspective into how this happened, when our representatives last Monday, a week ago yesterday, went to the Burt Harris mediation meeting regarding the golf course property, they were confronted with the realization that the property's fate was going to be settled that day, there and then. With that realization, there was a whole day of negotiation back and forth. And given the fast evolving circumstances of that day, we believe that we put into motion the basis for the best possible future for the property. And I have to say that this probably wasn't something created on that day in people's minds. I appreciate, at least my belief, that this kind of creative solution was kind of crafted beforehand. And I appreciate that people in the county had our backs in starting to put this structure together. In particular, because the county is fronting the purchase price that we could never have secured a loan for, and is diffusing the repayment and ongoing costs through a special taxation and management entity, we now have a way to purchase the property and assure a wonderful, secure, and serene future for RGE and its residents. And that is really, really the case. But as Alan said, the devil is in the details. And since the announcement of the proposed settlement was made just a few days ago, we've seen many of our residents raise questions and voice doubts about this proposed arrangement. And given the limited information that's been put out so far, I can't help but understand the fear and the skepticism that some of them are experiencing, what I've just heard already. And you'll probably hear more of. For example, my reading of it is according to the text of the settlement, the county will be reimbursed for its $5.8 million purchase price by establishing a special tax district, and once paid off, the property will be owned by a independent special district, not RGE. Wow. Now, that may be a really good situation. We just don't understand it yet. It may be like, well, instead of buying your car personally, lease it through your company. But we don't know that yet. We don't understand the nature of this ISD and whether or not it will work for us. And along with being the vehicle to purchase the property, the ISD will exist to effectuate the public benefits derived from its public ownership. So, if I read this, maybe too quickly, but if I read this, so the residents around the property will pay for the property, but not technically own it. And then will they have to pay for its upkeep, benefiting the public going forward? I'm sure these questions are going to be addressed and answered very well, but these are the kinds of things you get from a first reading of a text like this. And if the property provides public benefits derived from its public ownership, how much investment in infrastructure and amenities can we expect from Collier County going forward? Or will it be the sole burden of the ISD? Again, questions that need to be looked at and answered going forward. But in the final analysis, this settlement is averting a disaster for us. The disaster would have been development, high-density development, the loss of our floodplain, and so many other quality of life issues beyond survival. So I heartily support your attitude that this is just the beginning of a long conversation and a long exploration into how this thing might work and how it might benefit. But I thank you very much for starting the bones of this, and I really look forward to it not only be a wonderful vehicle for us going forward, but may even be a template for how to deal with golf course conversions in the future. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Debbie McDowell. She'll be followed by Hans Johnson.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Debbie McDowell. I reside in Riviera Golf Estates. Most of my questions have already been answered. I just have two items I would like to address. And the first is, you, Commissioner LaCastro, you, Commissioner Cowell, and the attorney all mentioned the word vote, and that is my problem. There has not been or mentioned a community vote. This has been done behind our backs. We would like a community vote like before, and the majority, that's not too much to ask, the majority of the votes, according to our covenants, would be the proper way to handle this. And the other thing I have is the cost of the maintenance. And I know you said that we have to address that, but I need, and so many of my neighbors need to know exactly how much this is going to cost us on a maintenance level, because I think that the figures you're coming up with for the property tax yearly is not the problem. It's the fear of all of this maintenance, especially what we have just went through with the pool in our development. It was a lot more than we had anticipated. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Your next speaker is Hans Johnson. He'll be followed by Ruth Ellen Fiedler.
Good afternoon, Hans Johnson, 154 Versailles and Riviera Gulf Estates. One of the entities proposed in the document is an MSBU. The county has a great pamphlet on how this is to be done. There are 7 steps, but the mediated settlement agreement appears to skip the first 6 and goes right to your approval. If someone wants to establish an MSBU or similar entity, then the procedures that the county has outlined in this pamphlet should be followed. I have long advocated that the Riviera Golf Course become a conservation Collier property. Now that the owner has indicated his willingness to sell, is it possible to restructure this agreement to do just that over time? As a conservation Collier property, the stormwater issue would be addressed and the property would be available for passive recreation. Thank you.
Your next speaker is Ruth Ellen Fiedler. She'll be followed by William Cannon.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name's Ruth Ellen Fiedler. Some of you know me as Ellen. I live at 522 Charlemagne Boulevard. And I moved down here from New Jersey, in case you couldn't tell from the accent, 9 years ago. I moved here because I felt like Naples felt like home. I looked through a lot of different communities. I chose Riviera Golf Estates because I suffer from PTSD and severe claustrophobia. That community felt open. We have double wide roads, we've got the golf course, and so I always felt kind of at ease there. When I first moved down here, I couldn't get over the amount of rain. I was shocked. And the water flowed through the swale. The following year, it still flowed, but it was a little bit wider. And then came Irma, 2017, where we had a deluge of water in August, saturating the property. And so often the golf course did look like a lake. So come Irma, I evacuated. I went home. I went up to Georgia, and I got a text from my neighbor. He said that he would go try to take a look and see how my house was the next day. He texted me back. He could not get to my house because the water from the golf course and the overflowing swale had met up with the road, because I have a storm drain next to my house, had met up with the overflowing storm drain in the middle of my house. FEMA came in, 2 foot of water. My house caved in, it was totaled. I was a year homeless, which only brought my PTSD on a little bit worse, making things not easy. Now I have a new house, yay me, and I am FEMA spec, yay for me. But I also have a mortgage, which I didn't have before. And I am concerned that if we do not do something about this, the next catastrophe of a hurricane or a series, even 4 inches of rain like we had the other day where Marseille was flooded. I am afraid if we don't do something about this, hundreds of homes are going to be lost the next time around. And because of that, I think that it could very well destroy Riviera Golf Estates as we know it, especially if we have a development behind us. So be the heroes. Save this community. And whoever decided to do this, you're brilliant. Thank you.
Your next speaker is William Cannon. He'll be followed by Carol Donovan.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. My name is William Cannon. I live at 169 Fleur-de-Lis Lane, Riviera Golf Estates. I first became involved in the difference between Riviera and the golf course owners in 2006 when I bought my house. That was 17 years ago. I've been involved in every one of the actions we have tried to take to resolve the differences between the owners of the golf course and the Riviera Golf Estates Homeowners Association. We had many attempts to find a solution that's satisfactory to all involved parties. This recommendation today seems to me to be the best solution I've ever seen of getting all three parties to have an ability to say, I like it. And I do like it, and I thank you very much.
Your next speaker is Carol Donovan, and she'll be followed by your final speaker, Attorney Michael Witt.
Hi, guys. Carol Donovan. Of course, I live in Riviera Golf Estates, and I'm the second generation to fight this fight over this golf course. My parents are now in their late 80s, and they can't always get here. But they started with this. They were heavily involved back in the early 2000s, and I've been involved since 2017 on this fight. I just want to give you a little bit of background. For fun, I worked at the Riviera Golf Club a couple days a week. The last 2 years that it was open, it was really fun to work there. Everybody loved golfing there, and they were very sad when it closed. For the last 2 years, I've been part of the golf course working group, so I'm very clear about how we got here today. Although the community did not realize it was a surprise to all of us. And that's why the social media pages blew up. Nobody knows really what was going on. And I was also on the board when we put it to a vote to our community back in 2017 and 18. In our community, you have to win by, I think it's 67%, and we only lost by 50 votes. So the majority of our community back then wanted us to buy the golf course. Because we all want to decide what goes on in our community, right? So I just want to tell you I support this first step. I think it's a win-win for all sides. And I hope that we all come to the details that continue to make it feel like it's a win-win for everybody, including our community, because I think there's so many people that have so many questions that they don't feel like it's anything that's going to work for them. But I just think it's something that needs to be cleared up in all the details that we will work on as we move forward. In closing, I just want to say, as I've gotten older, and especially now that we're retired, that word peace means so much to us. And we want to continue to live in peace in our neighborhood, and having it developed would eradicate any peaceful feelings. So I really I commend everybody for working this through, and I think it's a really great idea. Thank you.
Your final public comment is from Attorney Michael Witt.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I represented Riviera in the mediation. I want to thank the county for the opportunity to appear and have Riviera Golf Estates be present. And I think the result of that was a very creative resolution of this that brought in probably perhaps the most important stakeholder other than the golf course owner who's going to be bought out. It resolves the Burt Harris claim, which alleviates any potential burden on taxpayers in the county, and allows Riviera Golf Estates really two big benefits, and that is preserving property values in the community without having to have the specter of future development, and also to gain some control through this independent special district of the future of that property. I want to address just a couple of the concerns that I heard where people felt that they were kind of hoodwinked and this just fell out of the sky on them. The mediation process is governed by Florida Statutes Chapter 44 that provides that that process, the discussions and the agreement are all confidential. And the board agreed to that term of confidentiality, and the board by law could not spill the beans to the residents. The representatives of the board could talk to other board members, but could not just get this out to the membership without violating Florida law until such time as the agenda came out from the county to have this heard by the county commission today. And that's when the board immediately took steps to notify the residents and the community. So I just wanted to make that clear. Another issue that's come up that I want to address, and I think it addresses some concerns of the residents, but also I really think kind of the practical concern that this board has that I heard when I was here opposing the, what's the word I'm looking for? Rescinding of the intent to convert ordinance a couple of weeks ago. And that is the county has the opportunity to resolve this Burt Harris claim on its own. It did not need to invite Riviera Golf Estates to that mediation. It did, and we're thankful that you did. But the county could take steps like this and in essence impose things upon not only Riviera but others in this area by setting up some type of district, take control of this property, get this property, and tax you all anyway. So now, the county could do that. Would the county do that? Maybe not, because you have these residents that you also care about and look out for. I believe as part of this ongoing process, if I could have just...
Take your time.
Okay, thank you. As part of this process, I think the board, your board of county commissioners, are going to want to know that the majority of the residents are behind it as we work with the county to produce an ordinance to come before you all to create this district. There's a lot we have to cover. There's going to be a lot of details in there. We knew that as we negotiated and as we brought this before you all today. And those that say, hey, we haven't had a voice in this, my understanding from the board is...
Sir,
yes.
remember, you're...
Yeah, I'm sorry. My understanding, they have the same concern that it's just going to be a board vote. That the board indeed will take this to the membership, which I think then also will obviate some concerns that you all have. Is this just 5 or 7 people on a board that are pushing this through, or do we have the majority of owners in Riviera behind this? So one last point. One of the provisions in this, I believe it's paragraph 7 of the mediated settlement agreement, is very, very important, and I believe it's time sensitive for the county and for Riviera Golf Estates and surrounding communities. And that is the state of the water management system basically served by this golf course. It's not in good shape. And as part of this mediated settlement agreement, the golf course owner, once approved and signed by all the parties, the golf course owner will provide a license to the county to go in and start these much needed repairs. So we're fast approaching rainy season, and I would ask on behalf of Riviera Golf Estates that the board vote to approve the mediated settlement agreement. Thank you, and thank you for the extra time.
Thank you. Mr. Klatsko, I got a question for you. One thing I always, and then obviously I expect the other commissioners do too, one thing I always get concerned about is precedent, because there'll be people watching this and say, gosh, what a great idea. The county should come in and buy our land. They should buy our property. They should buy our golf course. They should, we don't want that big condo development. So why does the county just come in and buy it? Before we give all the, I really appreciated this lady clapping and saying, wow, what a great idea. But before we pat all the attorneys on the back and give them credit, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Klatsko, if this landowner didn't entertain the idea to sell this property, if the landowner said, I'm not interested in that, I want to build my houses and I want to push, I want to go to the max level, and it doesn't mean it was be automatic approval, because we all know there was a lot of moving parts. But if the landowner wasn't open to entertaining this, then it would have been dead in the water. Is that true? right? I mean, you needed the landowner to be able to be open to this, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and I want people to understand that, because it doesn't really matter to the folks in here, because you're the benefit of this possibility. But there's a lot of people that are sitting on very similar circumstances where the landowner doesn't want to go into mediation. So the one person that, whoever that person is, that should be, I don't want to say thanked or cheered or anything, but the uniqueness in this property is all parties came together and agreed to entertain this option, and that's not the case in all communities. So that is a big difference here. So I just wanted to make that clear. Having said that, here we go. Commissioner Hall, and then Commissioner McDaniel.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I want you to know I understand exactly why we're here. I understand that this whole process is to benefit you people. I love the creativity of the deal, but as the county, I realize the only reason why we are involved in this thing at all is because of the Burt Harris claim. And if the Burt Harris claim wasn't there, I wouldn't want any part of this. This would be between the landowner and your group. And my thoughts are, the landowner has really no claim, valid claim that I can see, and I'm no crackerjack attorney, but I've got great common sense and I've been down this road before. There is no case that he really has a great chance of winning against the county. This is an escape route for him that involved us, and then we can benefit you. It puts a tax, it puts a burden on people that may not really give a rip about they just may be in the area. They may not be in the floodplain, or they may be, so-called beneficiaries of the deal, but they don't want to participate financially in it. They don't have a dog in the hunt, so to speak. The landowner, if we said no to this, and I'm not saying I'm saying no, I'm just bringing up things that I've thought about. If we just said no, then the landowner would have to take us to court. If he wins, he wins. If he doesn't, then he's going to do anything with it, he has to apply for rezoning. If he gets the zoning, he can do what he needs to do. If he doesn't get the zoning, then he's going to sell. He's going to be looking for conservation Collier. He's going to be talking to you people. The value of that property is going to go, because he now doesn't have an exit strategy. If conservation Collier gets in, I think that's a great option. I don't know the details of that, but there's tax money that's available for that purpose. I think knowing that if we go forward with this today, that we're not bound by anything. We got 60 days to answer some questions, find out how much it would be for the people, find out the maintenance. I certainly, if we do this, I just want to be the bank. I do not want to be involved in mowing grass, maintenance, doing anything like that on the taxpayers' money. This would be just a financing agreement that we would put ourselves in a position for. Mention of a golf course by the county. There's reasons why that golf course isn't there. Again, it's not there today. It's not a profitable thing. Probably wouldn't be a proponent of getting involved in that. I said before, I wouldn't want to be any part of maintenance or benefits or management. I just want to be the bank. And then the comment about the template, that's really the main thing I'm concerned about. Because landowners that can't get their way with zoning, then all of a sudden the county's their exit strategy, and the taxpayers, I can take my money and run and don't have anything to worry about. So those are just some of my thoughts, okay? I just wanted to say them out loud. I could probably be comfortable with moving forward, knowing that we're not bound by anything, that we have 60 days to get some real answers done. And I don't like the fact that the landowner has an escape route on the backs of the taxpayers. I don't like that. But if it is that, then it is that. So with that, I'm finished.
Commissioner McDaniel, and then Commissioner Saunders, you're next, sir.
I agree with Commissioner Hall. I don't have any interest in running a golf course. I don't have any interest in burdening the taxpayers of all of Collier County. We talked about this at the beginning, and I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to start with the exposure here being borne by the folks in Riviera. If we can defer that expense with this information we're going to accumulate in the next 60 days to a portion of it to Conservation Collier and a portion of it to the greater watershed that Riviera assists with, that totally fine with that. But I have no interest, saying it out loud, I have no interest in opening up, operating a golf course. It's a losing proposition, and we don't need to expose ourselves to that. I have an interest in being the bank. I told our friend George in the back that 5 years ago when this first adventure started, right when I became a county commissioner. So being the bank is an okay way for us to go. I do want to express a concern in that operating agreement or the settlement agreement. It's not a concern, it's just an acknowledgement. I read in there that the county, prior to finalization of the settlement agreement, is allowed a license to go perform maintenance and those things. If it's being done under a license, I'm okay with that. I'm assuming we're going to document those expenses, and those will all, because several of the folks that spoke in opposition expressed concerns about the unknown costs. There are going to be more costs than this $5.8 million settlement agreement. So assuming those are all being brought into the process, and the benefit associated with expensing those funds in advance is going to help with the potential of the flooding that could in fact transpire through the upcoming rainy season. So I like the transaction as it currently sits, and moving forward will give us a lot of answers to the questions that have been raised.
Commissioner Saunders and then Commissioner Cole.
Thank you. I'm going to kind of ramble here a little bit and kind of jump around. I've got some notes and I want to kind of go through all of these. First of all, I do agree with what Commissioner Hall has said in terms of I don't want the county taxpayers to be in a position to be owning a piece of property and maintaining it under these circumstances. That doesn't mean I don't support the idea of moving forward with some type of a special taxing district or special assessment district to assist in the community acquiring the property and then assuming the responsibilities for maintenance. And so the woman who spoke about the cost, it will be more than just the cost of the purchasing the property. There will be ongoing cost to the community. And so there's been talk about Conservation Collier coming in. I don't know how Conservation Collier gets involved. I don't know if that fits within the definition of properties that Conservation Collier purchases or gets involved in. That's a question for the county attorney, and at some point I'll need some assurance that we're not violating some policy or ordinance dealing with the way we structured Conservation Collier, because that's a willing buyer, a willing seller concept, and it's kind of hard to, I guess, have this fit into the willing seller coming to the county to have the county purchase their environmentally sensitive lands. I just don't see how that fits, but maybe it does. So that's a big piece for me. My assumption is that this is not a Conservation Collier property. However, it is a piece of property that has some value for the general community for water management. So I can see how the county would be responsible for or participate in that aspect of the cost of maintaining that property, maintaining the water management aspects of it. But the weekly cutting of the grass and trimming of the trees and things of that nature, I don't see how that should be a county taxpayer responsibility. I would like to see some official polling of the members of that community through some just informal polling to make sure that more than 50% of that 690 homeowners, more than 50% of them want to do this, because they're going to be assessed. And that's generally how we create assessment districts in communities. They come to us and they say the majority of us want this, and we do some polling or whatever we need to do to make that determination. And so I do want to see that happen. I will also say that there's been discussion about how the taxing district or benefit district will be more than just the 690 homes but there are other beneficiaries around that because of the water management. Well, I don't particularly buy that. I don't want people outside of that community thinking that they're being assessed so that people in Riviera Gulf Estates can have beautiful views, have open space. Granted, those people perhaps can come walk on that property, but really the vast benefit of something like this goes to the Riviera Gulf Estates owners. They have the water management benefit, they have the views, they have the open space, they have all of those benefits that people outside of that community don't have. The people outside of that community may have some small water management benefit, but I think that's going to be really small. I don't think that's going to benefit the Riviera Gulf Estates in terms of reducing that the total cost. I don't want to see Collier County owning the property. I would rather, as Commissioner Hall has said, that we serve as the bank. I don't have a problem with some interim financing to make this happen. But I'd want to see it paid back, and I'd want to see it paid back quickly, not a 30-year payment back to the county, but the homeowners association using that property as perhaps as collateral would have to find some way to develop some financing through that district to pay the county back. And so those are the kind of things that I'm going to be looking for. I certainly feel your pain in terms of, nobody wants to have a bunch of houses out there, but that's that's the world we live in, and I'd like to see us help you with that, but I also don't want to see it become a burden on the taxpayers. I don't see this as a template for other golf courses. Take that on a case-by-case basis. And then I will say, since I see Mr. Jovanovich sitting here, I'm not convinced either that this is a really stellar Burt Harris claim. I don't want to see us go into court over it, but I'm not so sure that, I'm not in a position of wanting to move forward with this because I'm afraid that we're going to lose a Burt Harris claim. I don't think that's not my motivation, because I don't really think that that's in the cards. But what I do think is in the cards is that there will be an application for a development, and there will be houses there if we don't move forward. So I want to help this community. But those are my concerns and kind of my conditions on moving forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Cowell.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to say I agree with the majority of my colleagues up here in the dais on, us being the bank and not using the burden on the extra taxpayers here in the county to take care of this property as if it's, their burden. But that being said, I campaigned in your area. I was running 6 months ago before I took this job, and I can honestly say 90% of the people I spoke to in there, the first thing that came out of their mouth is, are you going to stop the buildings on the golf course? I can contest to that because it was personally told to me. I was there at a forum, an open forum with candidates that I was competing against. And the largest question in that room, the most important question in that room, out of 90% of people that packed 100-some people sitting in there, was, are you going to stop this building on our golf course? We want to know. And you asked every one of the candidates that day how they felt and what they can do to help you, because you needed help. I did a town hall meeting where I invited everybody, and I went to your community center, and we spoke about this. And that community center and that town hall, there was a lot of ideas bounced around and different things on what to do. We talked about the Burt Harris lawsuit. And in that open forum, I discussed and I gave ideas of possibly MSTU and your board, and questions were asked. And we moved on, moved forward. Now we're to today. So we all agree the biggest problem with your community is that nobody wanted anything built on that golf course. We can all agree on that. From what I saw, that's definitely was the main problem. So that's your problem. As of right now, we're taking a step to possibly solving that problem. But if we don't take that step today, you have that problem. It doesn't change. This is an opportunity to take a step in this 100-mile journey. The one step, the first step everybody has to take, no matter how far you walk in life, you got to take the first one. And today is that first step. So till we know what exactly you're going to be on the hook for, we don't know that today. We don't know that today. until the staff does what they have to do, the attorney has to do what he has to do, and then when we come back, and if you heard my opening statement, because I know it was asked by a few people in here, they want to vote. And I expressed this on the telephone call yesterday. I want to vote too. But I want to know exactly who's involved. Who's the stakeholders? I don't know if it's just the 690. I don't know that right now. We don't know that right now. So when we do find that out, and when this comes to the 11th hour and it's before us, I want you, your HOA, and whoever else may be involved, at some point, take a vote. We have a majority and we want to move forward because we have an answer to your problem. But we can't get there unless we take that step today. So I just want to make that clear. So, thank you.
Why don't you make the motion to move forward?
Well,
And I'd like to make a motion
wait,
to move
I like-
forward.
Do I get a say? I get a comment? I'm lit up over here.
And good.
I'm lit up over here. Remember, the county doesn't buy anything. Taxpayers do. If I lived in Lely, if I lived in Immokalee, if I lived in Golden Gate, I'm not sure I want my taxpayer dollars to save your golf course from being a condo. On the flip side, the good news is you have a very unique situation that other counties don't have. So I do agree that all the right people came together to include the current landowner who is open to this. You know, the bottom line is I'm always open to getting more information. So even the folks that came to the podium and said, oh, I totally hate this because there's a million unanswered questions. You know, I'll go back to what I said in the beginning. What we're about to vote on is to explore those answers. And if we all hate them, then, you know, we're no worse off than we were to begin with. So I'm for maybe taking a smaller bite of the apple. I don't want to make a leap and talk about being the bank or that may or may not be how I feel, but I think what we're voting on here is a much smaller piece, which is, do we want to get more information? Do we want to explore this as a possibility? And do we want to get the numbers? I don't want to do a rush to judgment. And I think what we're voting on today is not doing a rush to judgment. Yeah, we're on a bit of a timetable, but I mean, you know, that's common knowledge. I'll close by saying before we make a motion that when this was in my district as well, and I had town hall meetings, you all tried to buy the golf course. I mean, so it wasn't like you didn't make an attempt to do it. So I'm a little bit perplexed when some folks think this is a horrible idea. I'm like, well, then I guess you also hated it when you were trying to use your own money to buy it. This is a much better possible option. And I got bombarded by the same things as Commissioner Collier, which is, God, if we could think of any way to not build houses and build condos. But also I'm a little concerned that there'll be some people that hear this and think this is the solution anytime you don't want condos or houses in your backyard. And that's not the case. The uniqueness of this property is the water piece that we talked about, the possible conservation Collier, although I agree with Commissioner Saunders, that might be a stretch. And I would also be concerned of expanding the amount of people who could share the load, because you start to force that on other folks. First of all, I think they would storm this room with pitchforks and lit torches and say, we have nothing to do with Riviera Golf Estates. Why are we picking up a piece of the pie? But we're not voting on any of that today. So having said that, I mean, I defer to Commissioner Collier. This is his district, and you know, I would like to second the motion because we both sort of share RGE a bit. But Commissioner Collier, do you have a motion for us to move forward?
I'd like to make a motion to move forward in the way the agenda is written.
Okay, I'll second that. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, it passes unanimously. We'll be back in this room many times.
Yes.
I will say, in addition, Tricia and Mr. Carpenter and the board members, utilize this time wisely. This is almost the exact same speech that was given to other communities here that had kind of similar things, whether it was Isles of Capri or you know, the One Naples community. I mean, I can historically point to different things. Use this time wisely to speak with your constituents, because when we come back in here, the more cohesion we have, and especially the more understanding you can, you know, impart on your citizens of your community, the better for us to be able to decide something. And I know you'll do that. Thank you. Okay, County Manager, what's next?
Item 15, Staff and Commission General Communications. Item 15A, Public comments on general topics not on the current or future agenda by individuals not already heard during previous public comments in this meeting.
Okay, we'll wait till the room clears and then.
There are no registered speakers under 15A,
Okay.
sir.
We'll clear the room and then we'll, I think we're in the final stages here. Thank you all.
That was a huge
If citizens of Riviera Golf Estates either exit or take a seat, because we have more meeting to go through. So if you'd either exit or if you want to be part of the next topics, we'd appreciate it. Okay, let's continue. Thank you.
We have no staff project updates, so that brings us to 15C, Staff and Commission General Communications. We do have a couple of items. First off, just a note that we have received the information in our queue for approval regarding the State Veterans Nursing Home escrow, the $30 million. Just wanted to bring that to the board's attention that we've received it in the county manager's office for our sign off.
Oh, okay.
From the clerk's office.
Okay.
I'm sorry, you've received what?
The documentation for sign off from the
Oh, okay.
for the county manager's office to sign off on the transfer for the $30 million.
Oh, okay.
It's moving its way through the approval process.
Wonderful.
Great.
Just wanted to advise you at your direction that's moving along.
Okay.
Mr. Finn, anything else you need on that? Okay, thank you. We also have an item to bring to your attention regarding the sale of fuel at our marinas. Since we no longer have a vendor selling the fuel, we need to bridge the gap between now and when we can put an item on our Parks and Recreation fee schedule. So our proposal is to continue to sell the fuel at a 35% markup, which is what the vendor was selling it for up until now. But we need essentially the board's approval to continue with that practice so we can provide the fuel until we get it. We're not allowed to sell things outside of our fee schedule, and we don't have it on our fee schedule, so we need the next 9 days, your blessing to continue that practice, and we'll get it moved on to the fee schedule.
What are the marinas affected? So it's Goodland and Port of the Islands. Is there another one I'm forgetting?
It's Caxambas.
Well, Caxambas is still, I mean, we're not selling fuel, but once we get the pumps and everything, that would be rolled into the approval. But as of, if we give the thumbs up today, it would be Goodland, Port of the Islands, and is there an... okay, yeah, I knew there was another one. I was sitting here thinking, okay, and Cocohatchee. Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Got a motion, a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Looks like we're selling gas.
Thank you, and we'll
Okay.
be back at the next meeting. And lastly, Mr. Rodriguez may want to give you just an update on where we are with our beach parking. Go ahead, Dan.
Absolutely. The city did reach out to us, so their staff and our staff will be meeting soon to put the paperwork together and kind of look at what they're offering. And then Commissioner McDaniel and his counterpart at the City Council will review what staff has put together and bring that to the board. Additionally, if I may, there's an update on the concessionaire agreement. We did have some proposals come in, and we're in negotiations with the concessionaire. That's probably going to take us about 2 weeks to negotiate, and then we'll bring that to the board. And thank you for that transition plan. Alima and her team, as well as our procurement staff, continue to do good work to.
Did the proposals? They wanted all of what was available, or did some of them break it out?
The one individual wants all of the concessions. Yeah.
It did take all of them.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, so nothing's left out.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it's looking favorable to retain the parking, the boat launch fees for county for helping to retire costs associated with maintaining those parks.
Okay.
That's all we have. County Attorney Klatsko?
Yes, real quickly. There was an early item that was continued by the board. It was a land use item, which requires 15 days' notice. There's a court opinion that is out that requires us to re-advertise. Since it's 15 days' notice, it will not be coming back at your next meeting, but the following meeting. I will tell you that there's a bill pending in Tallahassee that would do away with that court decision retroactively. It has not been passed yet. It has been passed by the Senate, not by the House. So there's the possibility that it gets passed and we can continue, but at this point in time, I will be re-advertising. So you'll see it, but won't be seeing it at the next meeting. It'll be the meeting after.
Okay, I'm going to go down the line. Commissioner Hall, any closing comments or?
Yes, with the previous public comments regarding Naples Pathway Coalition, the workshop, do y'all have any interest in doing that? I mean, I do, because I'm a cyclist and they're hammering me all the time, but I just wanted to bring it up. I didn't want to.
I mean, one of the things I always say is similar to when we talked in here about like housing workshops. I'm for anything that's going to bring information here, but I just want them to be ready for prime time. So a lot of times people in this room scream for a workshop, yet they have no no cohesive framework. They don't have a short list of homework assignments for us. So just to come in here and but if they're ready for that, and there's some,
I can have them ready.
Yeah.
I know Craig well. I know Michelle well.
yeah, I think it's a big project. A lot of moving parts, touches a lot of communities. I mean, it's bigger than a bread box. So something that brought us up to speed here. And also, if it had some action items, definitely, I think it would have merit. Commissioner McDaniel.
In that light, I'm not interested in having a workshop to sit around and talk about the validity of pedestrian traffic.
Right.
No.
If there is specific direction that we can, because we do that all the time at the MPO.
I only
and so
want to
on
be
and so
able to take action.
Right, but my thought is, one of the things that I heard was making a special effort with staff to make sure we're on top of the availability of the recently bequeathed grant funds that could come to assist
my
with
next
those
question.
pathways.
How do we do that?
Okay, so tell staff.
How do we
to
do,
that.
there was a comment about let's do what we can to take advantage of the 250,000 or 250 million for that the state funding had. So how do we do that?
Sure, while Trinity's making her way up here, keep coming, Trinity. She's trying to hide in those seats over there. I would suggest back to the workshop, perhaps it would be a good idea for you and some of those folks to get in the room with Trinity and some of her folks and have a smaller group conversation. We also have a number of advisory committees through the MPO process that work on these matters as well. So I think getting everybody's collective thoughts in a small group, and then if we need to work towards a workshop, it's similar to as you said, with the housing issue, is coming in here and having to learn all of those things while we're all sitting around a table is probably counterproductive. When in a small group you get a lot of stuff done and then come in here with the specifics.
Sure, I'm
Trinity-
willing to take that mantle then.
Can I just say
Trinity,
one thing?
Trinity will work with you directly on that, and you get those folks together. Regarding grants, Trinity, it's all you.
Regarding grants, my department has, the most grants of probably any place in the county. We manage over $160 million in grants. I have a team that can get grants. So we monitor every grant opportunity that comes forward to us to look to see if we have a project that is worthy of that grant. And I would appreciate being able to sit down with you and talk to you about the grant funds that are potentially available, and if we have projects that will fit the grant criteria.
Okay, good deal.
One of the things I just wanted to add was we have a workshop in this room every 2 weeks. It's called the Board of County Commissioner meeting. So we're here. Sometimes I like the idea of a smaller group, because sometimes after that small group meeting, you realize we don't need a workshop. But also, too, if it's a matter of bringing something to the commissioners rather than just having us here for a special meeting, and as Commissioner McDaniel said, just to sort of hear what we already know, and there really wasn't a lot of action items. But sometimes, too, if there's just a couple of things that can just be added to the agenda. I mean, we're here. And so, and also, too, you've got the whole staff and everything. So, a special workshop, if it looks like that, we have to do something above and beyond a commissioner meeting, but that's where, like you said, a small group will know that, oh, we already flushed out, all the major parts, and it's something that could be back briefed at a Board of County Commissioner meeting to give us an update on something, or if there's one or two decision points, it could be added to the agenda, and we infuse that workshop right into the Board of County Commissioner meeting, would be my thought. So okay, Commissioner McDaniel, did you?
No, I'd like to support the direction to staff to pursue those newly bequeathed grant funds for the pathways. That's direction from the board, as direction from this board. That's all.
Absolutely. Commissioner Cowell.
Thank you. Yeah, I just don't want to. I just want to get it out there. I'm not Conservation Collier. I just know it seems like I'm kind of like the bad guy sometimes.
You are the best.
But I just want to let you know, I probably would have been the third vote today if they accepted that $419,000. But it didn't sound like we had a person representing the seller that really wanted to sell any property today. And that's all I'm saying. I think we probably could have acquired that property today. But when I asked certain questions and I got certain answers, it kind of swayed me at the end, and I have to be honest. You know, I was all willing to buy that lot today. But, you know, I'm not going to be held at burden by the people that sell these properties and dictate what we're willing to offer them. I think, you know, that's just part of the business. It's part of doing business, and I think that's our responsibility to offer what we think it's worth. So I just want to get that out there. Second, I kind of agree. I was listening to $250 million worth of grants, and then I'm sitting here and I got this map in front of me because I'm getting ready to take this bombardment with Riviera Golf Estates because I knew it was coming at 3 o'clock. And I'm sitting here and I got Kings Way, which is one of the bike paths that already exists, which runs from Davis down to Rattlesnake Hammock. And lo and behold, it borders Riviera Golf Estates, which we actually own 2 lots that we keep off to the side for maintenance, I believe, on their property, which then we have a proposed path that's already in the works on County Barn. Lo and behold, what's on the east side of Riviera Golf Estates is that new path that might be coming down the road in the future. So there's some potential that we could use some of that grant money and we can actually do connectivity for some of these bike paths through this property that is a urban green space, which Conservation Collier is right in their title, preserving urban green space. So which I know the commissioner was, you know, kind of questioning if this was actually a property Conservation Collier would probably be interested in. But, you know, it fits their definition of what they're trying to do is preserve some green space amongst our urban areas that they see diminishing and we're losing. So, and that being said, I just wanted to kind of get it out there. There's a lot more ways to skin this cat that we might be able to help this community offset some of the costs down the way in the future. And I just wanted to, Mr. Rodriguez gave me an update that the parking down at Bayview, the boat ramp, I guess they figured something out, right? They fixed that issue with the contractor.
They did actually, Parks and Rec reached out to the contractor and they had found a place for the employees to get a ride over and get onto the barge, so.
Good.
That up.
Great.
Worked really well, didn't it?
Thank you.
Commissioner Saunders.
I want to, just a couple really quick notes. I want to thank Dr. Yilmaz. I had asked him for a report on the progress being made in the Golden Gate City area in terms of expanding water and sewer service. As everyone knows, the county took over that privately owned system, and Dr. Yilmaz has provided me a list of numerous projects out there, and so I want to thank Dr. Yilmaz for doing that. I also, I don't know what the current status is with the Veterans Nursing Home, the transfer of funds. I see that Crystal is in the back there. If there's any other questions that she has, please let me know. We're going to be running up against a May 1st deadline here pretty quickly, and I don't know if you feel comfortable yet, but let me know if there's some discomfort, and we'll try to get you what you need. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And I got a few closing comments. So concerning that environmental lot on Marco, first of all, no apologies needed from anyone. They can always reattack with us and counter. And so, and I sent an email around to the appropriate people that I know are passionate about that lot and said, you know, it failed 3-2, but, you know, now the ball is back in your court. I think the one thing that it showed too is, and I think it might have helped a little bit, is if you're supportive of something like Riviera Golf Estates is a perfect example. When you flood the room with people and the majority of them, you know, get it or have something to say, it does help us here. So, I mean, if we would have heard from 5 speakers that maybe would have spoke more eloquently and about the importance of that lot and all that. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball knowing every moving part. I actually was, as the commissioner for District 1, was disappointed that there wasn't sort of a bigger presentation about this lot, since it was kind of on the fence. But I've sent a note back saying, you know, you can counter, and I think, we were all sort of implying here, if they put that lot on the market to sell it to a developer who's going to put a house there, they might get more for it, but I don't think they're going to get 6, 7, 800,000 for it, and then they're going to pay a realtor and a whole bunch of other things. So maybe this one will come back to us and be, on the list. One of the things I talked to Parks and Rec about at one of the breaks was you heard the Paradise Sports Complex talk about the food truck and how it sort of might just be sitting and collecting dust at times. We actually might be able to use it at certain parks. At Tiger Tail right now, we don't have a concessionaire who's selling food. We have vending machines, and we actually have brought in food trucks. And so I talked with Alima at the break and said, if you think you can use that food truck elsewhere in the county, whether it's at our parks or somewhere else. So, we're going to make sure that if it's sitting and it could be utilized somewhere else and provide a service that we do that. Jamie Cook and I went out to the rock crushing lot, just so you know, so we got our boots dirty and we sort of shocked all of the people. I mean, they knew we were coming, but I'm not sure they got much notice. I hated what I saw out there a lot less. I'll put it that way. There was more equipment out there. There, some of the spears that we're catching of, there's no water truck, there's no this, all that stuff is out there. It's not awesome, it's not great, but I hate it a lot less. And we gave some direction out there as to, okay, can you start moving some of that crushed rock into this area here? And we got a lot of yeses and a lot of positive things. So we'll continue to watch that. We know 1 May is going to come and go. There is not big giant boulders out there. So one of the things that, I'll just throw it on me, that I proposed was get some trucks out there, and the rock that's going to take 6 months to crush that are the biggest pieces, they've already done all that. So that train left the station. So what's left now is all equal size and effort. But Jamie, I appreciate all the effort you and the team has been doing, keeping us updated. We're going to continue to take that in smaller chunks. So on 1 May, we're not going to give them 3 more months. My expectation, and I think it's shared up here, is that we continue on the path that we're on, continue to get updates. I think once they start spreading around some of that crushed rock, the area will aesthetically start to look a lot better, and then they can finish the job. At the next meeting, y'all remember a couple meetings ago, I talked about a resolution for liens and fines and how we could strengthen things. I didn't add it to this agenda here because I knew we had Riviera Golf Estates and a few other things, and actually Mr. Kladscow and myself and Mr. French and his whole team, we were sort of refining that resolution and the executive summary. So we will send it out to you well before the next meeting. Appreciate if you read it, and so that when we vote on it, we either make changes to it, you love it, you hate it, or what have you. But in the end, we're trying to put something that's not ramrodding something in, but it's just reinforcing our expectation of liens and fines. And then Mr. Kladscow did some great work on the liens resolution that put some verbiage in there that maybe should have already been in existence. So more to follow on that in 2 weeks. And then I just want to, we always like to recognize people. I want to give a shout out to somebody who maybe I didn't know her until I just met her, but her name's Catherine Shashiri, right? Did I say that right? Sashiri? Sashiri. So y'all know that we're putting in a stoplight at Treviso Bay, and it's, we feel like we're building the Eiffel Tower there, but there have been some challenges due to the hurricane and materials. Long and the short of it is we have a county employee, Catherine, here, where one of the issues that was slowing down the installation was the dirt. Was too high of a pH, and everything came to a screeching halt. And oh my gosh, it's nobody can figure out what to do. This lady got a bucket, put it in the trunk of her car, went out there on her own accord. I filled the bucket, drove up to Fort Myers to get some other samples of dirt on her own. Bought a kit to test the dirt, I think, and I might be over summarizing, but I think the bigger takeaway is, man, this is an example of somebody on our county staff who just went above and beyond, got totally out of her area of probably responsibility, but just wanted to get the job done. And when that light gets activated, she, more than maybe almost anybody else, gets part of the credit for keeping something that would have had a whole bunch of people doing this. And, like she even told me yesterday, she goes, the bucket's still in my trunk. And I learned so much about testing soil. So, Catherine, wherever you are, if you're listening, or people that work with her. What's that? Yeah, we're going to put a plaque on that. When you push the button to activate the crosswalk, there's going to be a little picture of Catherine there saying, "I tested the dirt you're standing on." But I wanted to just give her a shout out because when I heard the story, one of the things that I really admire, and I always think it's something you can't teach, but if people have it, it's an incredible positive attribute, and that's initiative. And so, Catherine, if you're listening, your initiative might have seemed like it was unnoticed by a lot of folks, but it's not, and it's certainly appreciated. And that is a big project out there that saves lives, moves traffic. But you know what? If you don't have a bucket full of dirt and a pH testing system and somebody who's willing to do all that, projects like that can come to a screeching halt. So Catherine, thank you so much for doing that. And it looks like we're very close to activating that light. Having said that, any other reattacks, as we used to say in the military? I used to be in the military. I don't know if